Tigray. They call it Great Abai Tigray, the Great Abai Tigray, or the Great Tigray region. And this is stated in the document, and the introductory part. It says, Welkite, it is underlined if you see this one. Welkite and Talant will be included in their map, or in their administration. And of course, their main objective and task will be making the Amhara people, eliminating and making the Amhara people as enemy. So their enemy is the Amhara people. So their struggle is against the enemy, against the Amhara people. And yes, of course, they have stated and clearly documented how they may suffer, how they may attack, how they may revenge the Amhara people. So according to this document, the Welkite people is already labeled as a part of Tigray. And on the other side, the Welkite people is labeled as enemy, because the ethnicity of this Welkite people is Amhara. So the land is already planned to be annexed, and then the enemy, the people will be eradicated. እዚህ ላይ አማርኛ ለመጨመር ከይቅርታ ጋር በአማርኛ ለሚያድ ኢናማርክ
ይቻላል።
ኦኬ የወልቃይት ጉዳይ ስናይ የወልቃይትን ጉዳይ እዚህ ላይ ስናነሳ የምናውቀው ነገር በማኒፌስቶአቸው በአጋጣሚ የመጣ ወይም ቦርደር ለማግኘት ወይም መውጫ ለማግኘት ወይም የተለያዩ ምክንያቶች ይሰጣሉ። እንደዛ ለማግኘት ብቻ ሳይሆን ትልቅ ትግራይ ብለው የሚጠሩትን የትግራይ አካል ለመመስረት እና ኢትዮጵያን ለማፍረስ ካላቸው እቅድ ከተነሱበት ዓላማ በማኒፌስቶአቸው በ1968 ውስጥ ባወጡት ማኒፌስቶ ላይ በግልጽ የተቀመጠ ስቴትመንቱን እዚህ ባጭሩ አስቀምጫለሁ። መቅድሙ ላይ ወልቃይትን እና ጠለምትን የትግራይ አካል አድርጎ ነው የሚያስቀምጠው። የምትመሰረተው የታላቋ ትግራይ አካል ነው። ትግራይ ማለት ይሄን ያካላል ብሎ ተቀምጧል። ከዛ ውስጥ ወልቃይትና ጠለምት በዚህ ማኒፌስቶ ውስጥ የተካተተ ነው። በጣም የሚገርመው በዚህ ማኒፌስቶ ውስጥ እንዳውም የተዘለለው ጠገዴን ዘለውታል። ግን ወልቃይትና ጠለምትም ሙሉ ለሙሉ የትግራይ አካል፣ ትግራይ ማለት እሱ ነው ብለው ዲፋይን አድርገዋል። ሌላው እንደሚታወቀው ዓላማና ስራው ተብሎ የተቀመጠው የህወሓት ዓላማ ወይም የትግራይ ነፃ አውጪ ድርጅት ዓላማ በቀዳሚነት ጠላት የሚለውን የአማራን ብሔር ጭቆና ማስወገድ ነው። ጠላት የሚለውን የአማራ ብሔር ማስወገድ ነው፣ ማንበርከክ ነው። እንዴት የአማራን ብሔር እንደሚያንበረክኩትና እንደሚያጠፉት በግልጽ ደግሞ የተቀመጠ አለ። እረፍት በማሳጣት፣ ዘሩን በማጥፋት፣ በመግደል፣ ቶርቸር በማድረግ እረፍት እንዳያገኝ፣ የዘላለም እረፍት እንዳያገኝ በማድረግ የአማራን ህዝብ ማጥፋት ይላልና ከዚህ አንፃር ወልቃይት የሁለቱ ዓላማዎች የሁለቱ ሐሳቦች ቪክቲም ነው። የሁለቱ ሐሳቦች ሰለባ ነው። አንደኛው ትልቋን ትግራይ ተብሎ የተቀመጠውን ሐሳብ ለማሟላት የተወሰደ ነው። ሁለተኛው አማራ በመሆኑ የአማራ ህዝብ አማራ በመሆኑ ዘሩ አማራ በመሆኑ ያም ህዝብ እኔ አማራ ነኝ ብሎ የሚያምንና በአማራነቱ የማይደራደር ሆኖ በመገኘቱ ለአማራ የታሰበው ስቃይ፣ ለአማራ ህዝብ የታሰበው ሰቆቃ፣ ለአማራ ህዝብ የታሰበው ጥቃት በሙሉ የወልቃይት ህዝብ ላይ ተፈጽሟል። እና this is የመጀመሪያው ፕላንና እስከ ስልጣን ላይ እስኪወጡ ድረስ ያደረጉት ነገር ይሄን ነው። So in this time, in the duration of from 1975 to 1991, all the tortures, all the invasions, all the detentions, or mass killings, or all atrocities are completely practiced by the Wolkite people. There are the mass killings have recent documents, recent interviews, recent testimonies, human testimonies revealed that they have the three categories: the elders, 4 categories. Sorry, the elders and the illiterates and the leaders and the youngsters. So they categorize first. They eliminate the elders. Then, in association with the elders, they eliminated all the literates. Anyone who can read and write already killed and eliminated. And the other one is the leaders, the adults who can lead the community and the society, also eradicated. And then after the last one, the last category is the youngsters who carry on the history and who carry on and continue the generation, also killed and eradicated by the TPLF during intensively during this time. Yeah, the second phase is for annexation plan implementation is between 1991 to 2019. That is when the TPLF becomes the government of Ethiopia, or the governor of Ethiopia. So during this time, all atrocities, all mass killings, or all plans implemented under the cover of the government. And this part, the annexation is legalized by the plan. The TPLF manifesto is legalized by the so-called the supreme law of the land. They call it the Hegge Mengist. And it's implemented under that cover and becomes legalized. And because of that, since there is no any reason to annex it Welkite to Tigray, they applied ethnic federalism, language-based ethnic federalism. Actually, ethnic federalism, they have it has a different version, but the TPLF implemented language-based ethnic federalism. And TPLF also, in this duration of this time, they identified all cultural cannibalism on our people, on the Wolkite Tagadi Talant people. They eradicated and replaced all cultural heritage of the Amhara people and the Gondar people, then replaced by the Tigrayans. And they changed all historical and places, especially the name of the schools, the name of the roads, the name of the rivers and the mountains, and everything. Everything is all historical places represented by the Tigrayan name, and changed all as much as possible, having association with the Tigray people, or what we call it, the Tigray story. And one of the parties, they call it, even the region itself, they call it, instead of saying Wolkite Tagadi Talam, they call it, especially the Wolkite and the Tagadi region, is Western Tigray. So as you heard now, day and night by the Western media and diplomats or whatever, so they say the Western Tigray, Western. This naming is one of the character, or one of the steps they applied for ethnic cleansing and the genocide on our people. And so and the other one is demographic changing. By the way, the Wolkite people start struggling. I'll come back on that point. That start struggling from the very beginning of the annexation process, the annexation plan and implementation. Because of that, especially starting 1972 Ethiopian calendar, these rebels, they start eradicate the people. So when our people start fighting with them, and most of the women and children fled from the region, because it becomes a war zone. On one side is the war zone, because It is a host for APRP, host for EDU. I don't know exactly the English name, and I call it EDU, and I pick that name. And the EDU and APRP is their base their base were in the Wolkite area, Wolkite and Armacho area. That's the northern part of Gondar, the northern and western part of Gondar. And because of that, it is totally a mess, and it becomes a war zone. So because of that, our people, especially the children and the kids and the women, are just left the area to save their generation. And because of that, a huge gap is created between in the population in that area. And the TPLF got in 1972, the TPLF they got in Ethiopian country, they got the very weakened people, the very weakened community in that area. And then they start changing the demography of that area, and by settlement, they use a huge mass settlement. And when they becomes a government, they applied all just like now. They using the NGOs and other United Nations organizations like UNHCR, the GTZ, and others. They resettled. They settled the Tigray ethnic people from different parts of the Tigray, and they became they moved them to Walkite, and also from the Sudan. The very sad thing is they bring the Tigrayan refugees from Sudan, and settled in Walkite, and that settlement is only for the Tigray people, and that number is totally is in many percent is greater than the people of the Wolkite who lived in that area. So the population is as unbalanced and becomes unbalanced, and the Tigrayans becomes much dominant in that area, and we can say the demography is completely changed. And the other part is the land grabbing and plunder and looting, and they became the Tigrayans. They got the as investors. They call it the investment plan. They supported by the Ethiopian banks and insurance company, and also by supported by the Western governments. They invest in huge amount and grabbing the land. They participated in the land grabbing and covered and occupied large fertile lands of the Wolkai people by the Tigris. But in this matter, I don't remember, as far as in our study, there is no other Ethiopians invested and participate in the farming investment in this area during 1991 to 2019.
Abiyu, I'm sorry. Time
Yes.
sensitive, and then you have another about 5 minutes. We've already
5 minutes? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, let me speed up. Yeah.
Yeah, please. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
And the other thing is the siege and the blockage of the media and the non-government organization. Our people is totally blocked and siege under the TPLF. So because of that, we named our organization as the voice of the victims. Then when it comes to, I would like to mention one thing. Because of this, the Ethiopian the Ethiopian people, especially the Gondar and the Amara people, they start struggling the atrocity and the oppose the ethnic cleansing process and the genocidal act conducted on the Wolkite people, and they formed the Wolkite Amhara National Committee, and led by Colonel Demmeka. And as you remember, or most of you guys, the TPLF is defeated in Gondar by the Gondar people, and especially they try to arrest Colonel Demmeka, and then we call it the Hamle Amist, or I don't know exactly in English, the Hamle Amist movement. And because of that, the TPLF is start defeated by the Amhara people, the Gondar people. Then the annexation plan implementation, the last section is from November 29 to present. And during this time, our people is enjoying freedom. You see, this lady is crying when she celebrated the first time after 4 years celebrating Ganna in Walkite as having they're practicing their culture and their identity. And the sad thing happened in November 2000, around November or December 2019, is the Maikadra massacre. That's the saddest thing happened. And one of the thing we proud is, unlike the Tigray people, the Wolkite people becomes the support and the backbone for our Ethiopian military force. And when they killed by the TPLF and attacked by the Tigray people, the Wolkite people becomes stand with the ENDF and supporting the government and the military. Now let's come to the Wolkite people struggle. As the Wolkites during this time from 90 in Ethiopian calendar 1972 to the end of the TPLF era, the Wolkite people struggling and fighting back the TPLF. And the first organization is called the Kafine, and this is the leaders of the community organize themselves and start fighting back the TPLF. And after they become government and have a huge power and resource, they organized the Ethiopian, our people moving from at that time when TPLF become a government, our people they can't have a base on Sudan, and because of that they moved to Eritrea and organize form a party called the Ethiopia Hizb Arbenyoch ግንባር. And in between 2009, all the Wolkite people in abroad, we formed the organization called it the Voice of the Victims. Now I'm the chairman of that organization. And after that, the Wolkite people also inside the country start struggling by organizing themselves and participating. All Ethiopians, especially the Amara people, start participating in this movement. And the slogan is the Wolkites Brasash Kanye. And they this is the final time the TPLF is defeated by the Wolkite people struggle. And that time is starting the fall down of the TPLF. So the Wolkite people struggle from the very beginning to the end, still now fighting for the freedom and the unity of Ethiopia. And yeah, this one is now the current situation and our challenge in the current situation. You see, the mass graves are found, and yes, we need to bury it, and we need to take out our parents, our ancestors, or our brothers, sisters, and we need to bury them officially as a human. And still, at the same time, we need justice and really all these genociders to be like they should get their punishment in the front of law and order, and we need justice. And at the same time, yes, now we are enjoying our freedom, and we are in our land. Our land is secured. We are more happy than ever, but still we have challenges. We don't have a legal endorsement from the Ethiopian government, and we have our people have still the budget and other issues, and we don't have utilities. Still, TPLF is preparing to occupy and the Wolkite, and still TPLF provoking here and there. So these are the main challenges. The significance of this struggle. I would like to present this in Amharic. የወልቃይት ህዝብ ትግል ዋናውን ጠቀሜታ እዚህ ላይ በአማርኛ ማንሳት ፈልጋለሁ ለኢትዮጵያውያን ለሁላችሁም እዚህ ላላችሁ። የመጀመሪያው ነገር የኢትዮጵያ አንድነትና ሉዓላዊነት ነው። ከሁሉም የሚቀድመው እንደ ወያኔ እቅድ ከማኒፌስቶ እንደተረዳ ነው። አሁን በአብዛኛው የትግራይ ኃይሎች በሚባል ደረጃ ዓላማቸው ኢትዮጵያን ማፍረስ ነው፣ ወይም በኢትዮጵያ ማፍረስ ሂሳብ ታላቋን ትግራይ የሚሉትን አካል መገንባቱ ወይም ትግራይን መገንጠል ነው። ይሄ ለሁሉም ሰው ግልጽ ነው በዚህ ሰዓት። የወልቃይት ጉዳይ ኢትዮጵያን የማዳን ጉዳይ ነው። የኢትዮጵያን አንድነትና ሉዓላዊነት የማስጠበቅ ጉዳይ ነው። የኢትዮጵያ አንድነትና ሉዓላዊነት ያለ ወልቃይት ጎደሎ ነው የሚሆነው ብለን እናምናለን። የዚህ ትግል ዓላማ የወልቃይት ህዝብ ትግል ዓላማ ወይም የወልቃይትን ህዝብ ትግል የመደገፍ ዋናው ጥቅም እና ወልቃይትን በጎንደር ስር የማካለልና የአማራ አካል የማድረግ ዋናው ዓላማ ወይም ጥቅም የኢትዮጵያን ሉዓላዊነት ማረጋገጥ ነው። የኢትዮጵያን አንድነት ማረጋገጥ ነው። ከእውነታው ባሻገር ማለት ከእውነታው ባሻገር የወልቃይት ህዝብ አማራ ነው። የወልቃይት ህዝብ እንዳየነው የጎንደር አካል ነው። ከዛ ባሻገር ግን የኢትዮጵያ ሉዓላዊነትና አንድነት ቁልፍ ስትራቴጂክ ቦታ ነው ብለን እናምናለን። ሌላው የወልቃይት ጉዳይ ጠቀሜታው የወልቃይትን ትግል መደገፍ ጠቀሜታው የአካባቢውን ሰላም ያመጣል። በአካባቢው ሰላምና መረጋጋት የሚመጣው ህዝባችን ሰላም አግኝቶ ተረጋግቶ መኖር የሚጀምረው ይሄን ጉዳይ እልባት መስጠት ሲቻል፣ የወልቃይትን ህዝብ ጥያቄ በወቅቱ መመለስ ሲቻል ይሄ ነገር ሰላምና መረጋጋት ያመጣል። የልማት ከፍተኛ ቦታ ነው። የልማት ከፍተኛ ኮሪደር ያ አካባቢ እንኳን ለኢትዮጵያ ለአፍሪካ ሊተርፍ የሚችል ከፍተኛ ልማት ሊካሄድበት የሚችል የልማት ቦታ ነው። ወርቅ አለበት። ከፍተኛ የወርቅ ክምችት አለው። ከፍተኛ የሆነ የዕጣን ክምችት አለው። ከፍተኛ የሆነ የዱር አራዊቶች አሉበት። ትልልቅ ፓርኮች አሉበት። የሰሊጥ፣ የጥጥ፣ የማሽላ ምርት በገፍ የሚመረትበት ፈርታይል ላንድ ነው። የታላቁ የዋልድባ ገዳም መገኛ ነው። ይሄ ቦታ የዚህ የወልቃይት ጥያቄ መመለስ ማለት የኢትዮጵያን ልማት ብሎም የአፍሪካን ልማት የማፋጠን የማረጋገጥ እድል አለው። ሌላው የወልቃይት ጉዳይ የጂኦፖለቲክስ ጉዳይ ነው። አሁን የወልቃይት ጉዳይ የኢትዮጵያውያን ጉዳይ ብቻ ሳይሆን በግልጽ እንደምናስቀምጠው የኤርትራ የሱዳንም ጉዳይ ነው። የዛን አካባቢ የጂኦፖለቲክስ የአካባቢውን ፖለቲካ ለመቆጣጠር የወልቃይትን ጉዳይ በአስተማማኝ ሁኔታ ማረጋገጥ ያስፈልጋል። ለዛ ደግሞ ትክክለኛው መፍትሄና ጠቃሚው ብለን የምናምነው ወልቃይትን በማይናወጽ ሁኔታ ዳግም ለዚህ አይነት ችግር በማይገልጽ ሁኔታ በጎንደር ስር በአማራ ስር አድርጎ ማስቀመጥ። ይሄ የህዝብን ጥያቄ መመለስ ብቻ ሳይሆን ከኢትዮጵያ ጥቅም አንጻር የአካባቢውን ፖለቲካ ከመቆጣጠር አንጻር ትልቅ ጠቀሜታ አለው። በአጠቃላይ የወልቃይት ጉዳይ ታሪካችንን፣ ባህላችንን፣ ማንነታችንን፣ ኢትዮጵያዊ አንድነታችንን እና ልማታችንን የማሳለጥ የማረጋገጥ አንድምታ አለው ማለት ነው። የኛ ኤክስፔክቴሽን ጨርሻለሁ። የኛ ኤክስፔክቴሽን እንደ ልሳነ ግፏን እንደ ወልቃይት ህዝብ ትግል መሪ ድርጅት እኛ የምንጠብቀው ከዚህ ተሳታፊ ወይም ከኢትዮጵያ ህዝብ ከወገናችን የምንጠብቀው አንደኛው ሌጋል ኢንዶርስመንት ነው። ይቅርታ፣ አንደኛ ሌጋል ኢንዶርስመንት መረጋገጥ አለበት። የወልቃይት መሬታችን ይዘናል። ከዚህ በኋላ የሚመጣ ነገር የለም ብለን እናምናለን። እስከ እንኳን አሁን መሬታችን በእጃችን ይዘን ባለዝንበትም ጊዜ ብዙ ዋጋ ተከፍሎበታል። ነገር ግን ከኢትዮጵያ ህዝብ እውቅና እንፈልጋለን። ከኢትዮጵያ መንግስት እውቅና እንፈልጋለን። ይሄ ሌጋል ኢንዶርስመንቱ አልተደረገም እና ይሄ የአማራ ማንነት የህይወት ቦታ ማካለል ሳይሆን የአማራ ማንነት የአይደንቲቲ ኢሹ እልባት አልተሰጠውም እና ይሄ ከኢትዮጵያ ህዝብ ከኢትዮጵያ መንግስትም የምንጠብቀው ነው። የኢትዮጵያ መንግስት የምንለው የኢትዮጵያ ህዝብ ወኪል ነው ብለን ስለምናምን እና ይሄን ኢንዶርስመንት ሌጋል ኢንዶርስመንት እውቅና እንጠብቃለን። ሌላ ፍትህ ነው። ፍትህ በወልቃይት ህዝብ የዘር ማጽዳት ወንጀል የፈጸመው የወልቃይትን ህዝብ ላለፈው 40 ዓመት በሶቃቃ ውስጥ ያኖሩ ያሰቃዩ የገደሉ ያሰደዱ የገረፉ እነዚህ አካላት በሙሉ ለፍርድ እንዲቀርቡ እንፈልጋለን። ፍትህ እስካልተሰጠ ድረስ ፍርድ እስካልተገኘ ድረስ ይሄ ነገር እያመረቀዘ እየቆየ የሚሄድ ይሆናል ማለት ነው እና ይህ እንዳይሆን መፍትሄው ሌጋል ፕሮሰሱን ጀምሮ በተለይ በጄኖሳይድ የሚከሰሱትን አካላት ለኢትዮጵያ ህዝብ ወደፊትም ለመጪው ትውልድም ማስተማሪያ በሚሆን ዘንድ መከናወን አለበት። ሌላው ሪፓሬሽን ነው፣ መልሶ ማቋቋም ነው። አሚን የሪሃቢሊቴሽን ነገር ነው፣ የመልሶ ማቋቋም ነው። ህዝባችን በከፍተኛ ሁኔታ በስደት ላይ ነው። ከፍተኛ ስቃይ ከፍሏል፣ ከፍተኛ መከራ ደርሶበታል። ህዝባችን አንደኛ መልሶ ማቋቋም ስንል ወደ ቦታው መመለስ። በተለያየ የኢትዮጵያ ክፍል ተሰዶ ይገኛል። ጥናቱም የጎንደር ዩኒቨርሲቲ ጥናት እንዳመለከተ እንደሰማችሁት ቀደም ብሎ እሱን ያመለክታል። በሱዳን እና በመላው ዓለም ከፍተኛ ቁጥር ያለው ህዝባችን ተሰዶ ይኖራል። ወደ ርስቱ ወደ አባቶቹ ርስት መመለስ አለበት። ይሄ መመለስ ብቻ ሳይሆን የኢንፍራስትራክቸሮቹ መስተካከል መልሶ ኑሮውን ሀብሎ ስለሚጀምር ኑሮውን በትክክል እንዲጀምር የማድረግ እና እንዲህ አይነት ስራዎች ሊካሄዱ ይገባል። ይሄን ደግሞ ሊያደርግ የሚችለው የኢትዮጵያ ህዝብ
የኢትዮጵያ አብዩ በዲስካሽን እናምጣው። ምክንያቱም ፕሮፌሰራን መሄድ አለብኝ እያሉ ነው እና እሳቸውን እንትን ዲስካሽን ውስጥ ቬሪ ኢንትረስቲንግ ነው። በተለይ ምን እንደምንፈልግ የሚለው ፖይንት እና በዲስካሽን እናምጣው። ይቅርታ።
እሺ እኔም ቤት እሺ፣ በጣም ጥሩ። ሪፓሬሽን ነው፣ የኮምፔንሴሽን ጉዳይ ነው። ሪፓሬሽን ያስፈልገዋል። ህዝቡ ተጎድቷል፣ የሞራል የአካል ጉዳት ደርሶበታል፣ በህይወቱ ዋጋ ከፍሏል። ለነዚህ ሁሉ ካሳ ያስፈልገዋል ብለን እናምናለን። ፕሬዘንቴሽኔን ጨርሻለሁ። አመሰግናለሁ። እግዚአብሔር ይስጥልኝ። በኋላ በጥያቄና መልስ እንመለሳለን።
Thank you. I know it's all very interesting and we definitely will get back into the discussion of it. So Professor Ann Fitzgerald, you have the floor. Can you unmute yourself? Is she co-host? Have you made her co-host?
Yeah, you introduce her.
Yes.
Yeah. So Professor Ann Fitzgerald is a friend of Ethiopia, and she works in Canada. She's an expert in international policies and expert in Africa, and especially a very good friend of Ethiopia. And I'm sure some of you have seen her and her latest Al Jazeera debate or presentation with Human Rights Watch, where she really shined and brought the cause of Ethiopia. She's a true ambassador for us. So welcome, Professor Ann.
Thank you very much, Wasi and Gleen, and to my co-panelists, Ato, Abiyu. A really interesting presentation. My camera was off because I'm making Easter supper for 16 people, so I just had to dash off, but the computer was right in front of me as I was doing it. So in my limited time, I'm going to talk about 3 things. I'm going to talk about my views on the reports that have been given on the Wolkite region. I'm going to talk about some general implications and some possible priorities moving forward in my own personal view. So I think for those of you who saw my very quick summary on Al Jazeera with not much notice for that interview, I have to say, but I hope I got some of the important points across. I linked it to research fundamentals because I was very surprised at the lack of assiduous attention given to basic research fundamentals in that report, things that I would expect my undergraduate students to be very well versed in, let alone a research-based advocacy group. The first glaring issue for me was that no one went to the area where the evidence was. I found this very strange, and on the Al Jazeera interview, two things were raised: that remote research was a good thing and very optimal these days, which on a research laundry list is probably the last choice that you would have to defer to if you were seriously limited in going to an area. And the other thing that was raised by the other co-panelists was that journalists couldn't go there. And of course, that's ridiculous because of the research that's been ongoing there over the last 14 months, and journalists have been on the ground over the last 2 months there as well. The next research fundamental is a literature review up front, which is essential for any piece of research, acknowledging existing data. And I felt that there was a real lack of data on the recent history of Wolkite and the realities from that recent history. Also, if anybody is doing work on these issues, it should be acknowledged, because of course, what you have to get to is a gap in the research that your particular research project is tackling. So it was very strange that the University of Gondar's work on this, which has been ongoing and well known that it was ongoing for the last 14 months, there was no connection made with that work. I think the report presupposed a link to the mass graves and the caves and what had gone on in Wolkite over the last 50 years and the current conflict, which was another very loose connection. The report also didn't acknowledge that displacement is a phenomena of conflict, and displacement has happened across the northern arc, North Wallo, northern Afar, which I'll come to in a minute, and also appears to be very absolute on details concerning my cadre, which run slightly, they depart from a lot of the reports on my cadre and the statistics that have been given on my cadre. And a lot of people are asking, why hasn't organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch not levied the same charges against the TPLF for the displacement of hundreds of thousands from Afar's northern communities, from areas like Walega, areas like North Wallo, and some of the camps that I visited over the last 4 weeks in Ethiopia also include Oromo and Somali IDPs, even IDPs from the south. So it's very interesting that there's been this focus on one certain group of IDPs and not others, even when in Afar they number over 500,000. The research methodological limitations are also unclear, and that's a fundamental basic of research, especially research in difficult areas. You have to almost be painfully honest about the limitations of your research and demonstrate ways in which those limitations were addressed, mitigated against, et cetera, et cetera. The analysis, in my view, and I did a bit of a forensic on the footnotes, the analysis was very heavily weighted to the interview data from the camps in Sudan. And we know that as well as normal Tigrayan communities, there were also many intelligence operatives in those camps, as well as SAMR youth group representatives. And for those, and I know I'm speaking to those who know very well the history from the 70s and 80s about a similar, similar phenomenon, what happened in the Sudan camp, how there were many intelligence operatives working and dictating what people were supposed to tell journalists, and anyone that knows the 1 in 5 network very well is familiar with this. So the data in the report was also inaccurate about the census. Recent census data from 2017 shows that the total population in the Wolkite region did not exceed 400,000. And to quote over 1 million displaced Tigrayans, I just don't know where those numbers are coming from. And then most concernedly, the content didn't really lend to the findings. All of a sudden we jumped to ethnic cleansing, war crimes, crimes against humanity. And without people going to the region on the basis of telephone interviews, somebody on the panel mentioned satellite imagery. And I don't know if that was to spook us all or what, but I almost interrupted and said, I'm not sure what the connection is between satellite imagery and forensics and DNA analysis on exhumed bones, exhumed bodies. So, these kinds of allegations and accusations, if they were made in a legal court of law, they would require a deep investigation sitting behind it. And from a research basis, a deep methodologically robust investigation, triangulated data from the ground. So they were and I guess the most glaring conflict of interest in the report was a lead researcher, and the research project manager, I think, was allegedly the son-in-law of, or the yes, I think the son-in-law of Sabat Nega, the founding father of the TPLF. And so a real conflict of interest that should have been stated in the research limitations right off the bat. And so the list goes on, but there are, in my view, sufficient issues to really call into question the report and make some pretty gripping statements to both organizations about having the report reviewed and reconsidered. General comments. So, if you look at this issue and what's going on the basis of the realities across the northern regions, and I have considerable photos, video evidence, etc., of the damage, clear patterns that are characteristic of insurgency warfare. Same thing happened to those 5 northern communities in Afar as well. The schools were tackled, the universities were vandalized, and the writing on the university walls and that was clearly done by the TPLF fighters, the vandalism, but the looting as well. Even if you went into the residences of the universities and the guest houses, some of which I've stayed in the past, so I knew what they looked like prior to seeing the remains that I did see. And the shower nozzles were taken off, the taps were taken off, the sinks, the hoods for the kitchen cookers, the fire extinguishers, the hoses, the fire hoses were cut off and taken. The panels in the roof were taken out, and the copper was taken from the wires, the circuits in the big pieces of machinery, like the cooking, like the bread makers and the COVID lab equipment, the fuse boxes on the wall were taken out, like anything of any value was looted. And this has happened, this is a consistent thing. And so I think that the other thing is that mass graves are elsewhere, not just in the Wolkite region. There was even one on the university campus at Waldia University. And, students, to their huge credit, trying to carry on life as normal, sit in classes outdoors, sit in rooms that were makeshift, but the resilience that I saw was just incredible. The surrounding circumstances notwithstanding. And yet, it just appears that the TPLF seem to be protected in all of this. They're being protected. There's no threats of punitive measures. no calls even in the report for them to disarm, but a lot of implications for FANO and regional security forces. And this call for peacekeeping forces, again, the content does not lend to this in my view, because why would you protect civilians from one region and not all the displaced civilians across other regions? I don't, you know, it's almost glaringly obvious why there's a rush to push this report out, fixated on one element of a problem that's multifold across the whole northern region. And as I said on the Al Jazeera interview, I feel that Ethiopia doesn't need peacekeepers, it needs the truth. And the authenticity and the veracity of data needs to be verified. I mean, the reality is that the outside world is not believing one side, nor is it totally believing the other side, or it can't be seen to be believing the other side too. So there's a lot of activity in between that's skewed towards the TPLF narrative. And I've got a paper coming out this week, and the front end of it looks at the alignment between the TPLF narrative and policy statements and official statements given by certain donor countries, leading G7 countries. So to tackle that reality, it doesn't require peacekeepers, maybe a monitoring mission or a verification mission. You also see a real push for the UN to be involved in whatever intervention is going forward. And I raise my eyebrows at that as well. The African Union is perfectly capable and it's almost like the joint investigation team that was perfectly capable to carry out the report in Tigray, but is not capable of carrying it out apparently in Amhara and Afar. The African Union was perfectly capable when everybody was calling for it to be involved, and when it was soliciting the role of former President Obasanjo, but all of a sudden it's not fully capable of providing peacekeepers for Ethiopia, even though it has done for other African missions. The second thing that I think is worrying is the extent to which this HRW Amnesty International report is a dress rehearsal for an edited text of Bill HR 6600. And I think I said in similar fora to this a couple of months ago that the text of these bills is often edited beyond the draft because time goes by. And I think in this case, a selective approach may be taken to evidence consideration and the bill's updated. And, you know, I suspect we'll see FANO and the regional security sector implicated by the text of this bill. You know, there are links to AGOA here, even statements made by Senator Menendez back in June 2021, when he referred a lot to Nima al-Bagir's reports, which we know have been deeply flawed and aligned with the TPLF narrative. Also, the Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International report drew on input from journalists who had reported from Sudan. And two of those journalists include Nima al-Bagir, but also Declan Walsh. And I did a lot of research on the ground in two different trips to Ethiopia over the last month. And I mapped the deployment patterns of the Ethiopian National Defense Forces, patterns which completely debunk the charge that this war was long planned and that Tigray was surrounded. Even data from Afar evidences that no ENDF forces were anywhere along that northern flank, far away from it, actually. So what is the most optimal course here? Well, you know, I was really delighted to see this session called an evidence-based analysis, because the evidence base has never been so important at the moment. In academia, I can see efforts across the international spectrum to sort of rewrite what's happened in Ethiopia over the last 18 months to 2 years. And I worry sometimes that there's not enough of an effort to try to counter that and to stay ahead of that with the real truth. So I think webinars like these need to have outputs. They need to have one-page executive summaries, something that will get out there on the internet and have the main points summarized from these discussions. Because if you keep meeting and keep talking about it, no matter how important these conversations are, you end up talking to yourselves, but don't project it outwards. So, you know, do exactly what the TPLF's Ministry of External Affairs is doing. They're issuing statements after every meeting on every issue. So I think organizations like this have to do the same. The TPLF strategy, in my view, is now focused on intervention. I think the campaign, which would be known as the third campaign, occupying northern regions in Afar, is probably dual objectived in nature. It's a land claim, I think, because of the rich resources there: potash, gold, sulfur, copper, etc., and positioning for bargaining chip purposes. And lastly, you know, a good strategic position for a counteroffensive to move down if ENDF troops are deployed up there. So the push is to involve the UN as well, and not just the African Union. I think my analysis of Twitter feeds at the moment is that the Director General of the WHO is very much being relied on by the group for his tweets, his travel schedule. You know, they need that leadership at the highest level within the within, you know, the Geneva, the Brussels, the New York-based influencing fora. And other than that, a disinformation campaign. And that disinformation campaign is now going through international NGOs, like the report that we've just seen released, but also there's a lot of engagement with universities to try to partner with TPLF-supported NGOs and university departments to have a discussion, to put a report out and issue it with a university's rubber stamp on. So again, this all goes into the circulation of rewriting history. The US seems to be managing the government and the prime minister like a yo-yo. When the government does something that's positive for US national interests in the region, it's given rope. And when it does something that's not in line, like not supporting the resolution on Ukraine, it's tightened by the noose again, it's snapped back in. So I think a significant investment by the Ethiopian government in African diplomacy is very important at the moment. Strategic communications always been very important. When I looked into it on the ground, you know, you see very quickly how understaffed and under-resourced these new communications offices are. And even communication by the leader, you know, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia is a very good orator. And I think some really compelling speeches that take a stand on principles that must underpin global partnership. The fact that Ethiopia will welcome any global partnerships, but they must be underpinned by principles such as fairness, decency, dignity, and mutual respect. All those things would be timely at the moment, but the evidence base is critically important. Thanks very much, Wasi.
Thank you so much, Professor Ann. You've touched on very salient points, and I think there's a lot of things that I hope you have some time to stay with us a little bit. Yes? Yes,
I do. I've got about 15 minutes, maybe 20.
Okay, good. So I think if people have comments or questions that we can go to those. One of my questions is this: what do you ask us? I mean, those of us in the diaspora, how else can we work this? Because this is the thing. I mean, we've been doing advocacy. We've been doing all the things that we try to do and do. It's almost very, very frustrating that nobody, you know, that nobody really listens or will have us at places where we can be effective. I mean, what you did in that one meeting on Al Jazeera, I mean, that's just so powerful, you know? So what else can we do? I mean, how can we partner with others, you know? So it's a little bit of all.
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, I'm forever thinking about things like that, because when there are constant reactions to tactics that are put out by the TPLF, and, you know, those who are touting that ill-informed narrative, the reactions almost reinforce the wrong message. You know, it's better to rise above and be preemptive with information flows instead of being reactive, because you end up reinforcing the messages that you're trying to counter. So I think the one thing is staying united, and I don't say that lightly. I sometimes I see within the diaspora community different letters being issued about the same thing, and I know that, you know, I stand for academic freedom, and so everybody should have a voice, but just to try to bring some of the output of the groups together under a strong alliance, I think, is critical at the moment. Because if you bring an article or an argument to Congress or other MPs, European MPs, or other representative groups, you want to look totally united to those groups. And I think a convincing argument is, you know, you're not standing behind any political party or political actor, you're standing behind the future of the country. These bills are very, very serious, and I'd like to think that they're not going to be passed, that Ethiopia has some friends that are going to stand up. But you never know what's, you know, you never know if filibustering is going to happen, or, you know, we've been sort of constantly surprised and shocked along the way in this journey. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and I spoke to certain individuals, and I addressed the university presidents when I was over in Ethiopia recently. I did say that, you know, you've got to encourage your scholars to access the data and publish, and if they need help on the publishing side, then they should connect with thought leaders across the diaspora, and you know, for co-authoring purposes, for proofreading purposes, editing purposes, etc. And I think I heard from a lot of those scholars, they feel that they're not in a strong position at the moment, because even international journals are taking a view on the Ethiopian conflict. And who reviews for those international journal pieces? Well, sometimes friends of Ethiopia, but sometimes not. You know, people who haven't behaved in the most supportive way. So it's a real risk trying to write something to be submitted these days. I think meetings like this, the committee that organizes it should agree on the key messages that it wants to draw, and the key links and additional resources that it can make available to members of the international community that want to learn more about Walkite, and put it out there, and really have a good social media strategy behind it, and a public affairs strategy behind it. The government is not doing this, so in a way you've got to try to help step in and close that gap, and otherwise, you know, just do anything you can to contribute to the evidence base. You know, there's a rumor flying around that the TPLF is engaging with law firms to take the government to the International Criminal Court, and you know, let's hope that doesn't happen. But you know, what do law firms do in legal cases? They turn to the evidence, and they don't turn to Medium and Burkina, as good as those publications are. They turn to the peer-reviewed, double-blind literature. So, yeah, support scholars, support their work. Government needs to give people access, open access to areas, open access to data. That's why I went over the last 4 weeks and said, I need to go here, and I need to go here, and I can't do research on something that's piecemeal. I need the whole access and access to all groups. So more people need to be encouraged to do that.
Thank you. We have a lot of hands up, a few hands up. So, and then the rest of you, please feel free to write your questions in the chat. Helen Epstein, you're next. So could someone, or unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Thanks so much. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you so much. This has been really, really fascinating, you guys. And I guess I just wanted to be, and in particular, please write as much as you can, as quickly as you can, because it was, you're right. More of this needs to be out there. It's really not available to the general public, particularly of the United States. In terms of activism, I work on other African countries that are also suffering a similar plague of misinformation, particularly also from Human Rights Watch, by the way. And one of the things that I think we are slowly learning is that, and I think Ethiopians have an advantage here, because you guys are concentrated in certain parts of the country around Washington, DC, and in other states and so on. And there's sort of large groups of Ethiopians in places. And the countries that I tend to work on, the diaspora is scattered all over the place, and it's much harder to have much influence if you're a tiny number of people in a particular state. But there's so many Ethiopians kind of often in one place that you can work, just working even with local politicians. If local politicians know that they are, that a significant constituency of theirs is unhappy about something the Americans are doing, they can take those concerns up the chain of command from, say, the local mayor to the congressperson to the senator, et cetera. So work at the grassroots, work with your local political representatives, and go visit them, have a conversation, make a clear case. This is what the government, this is what, this bill in Congress is intending to do, and here's why it's wrong, and here's the evidence, and all of that stuff. So I think that's sort of one strategy that might be helpful, particularly with an election coming up. There's no time to waste in terms of that strategy. And my final question is, I really didn't know about what had been going on in Welkite. And I have not read the report, and maybe I wouldn't ask this question if I had, but it seems as though the silence about this, I had never heard of this before. And I am just wondering what, I'm surprised even in the diaspora, there hasn't been more attention to it or conversation about it until now. And maybe there has, and I've missed it. But if anyone could fill me in on why that is, that would be great. Anyway, thanks a lot for listening.
Wasi, do you want me to take some of the questions in the chat?
Yes, you go ahead and take some of the questions in the chat. And then I was going to suggest a little bit chat, and then those that have their hands up.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
I'll do that, and then you can take everybody who's got their hands up, and I'll do a consolidated response.
Yes.
Are we? How many people? We're 93. Are these all Glean members, Wasi, or friends of Ethiopia?
We are different, all kinds of people.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, all kinds, yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
It's a public meeting.
Yeah, it's a public meeting.
Okay, all right. So what kind of shortcomings in bringing light? What strategies we put forward to fake propaganda? Well, I think you've entitled a meeting like this really well. To put out a statement afterwards is really important, and to try to get the other groups, not just Glean, but the other groups to sign up to that statement would be important. So, for example, the evidence-based realities of recent history in Walkite. Have a section on that. Bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, summarizing a lot of what my eminent co-panelist has said already. Then you can say concerning shortcomings with the recently published HRW and AI report, you can list your bullet points. And then you can put proposal for next steps. You know, I do hope letters have been written to these organizations. That's the basic thing that should happen. And letters that should be signed by all the diaspora groups or an agreed alliance behind this with the subgroups listed. Yes, somebody's asking me if my findings will be published. Yes. My findings are not on the Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International report, but it is based on weeks of field research and many, many interviews with IDPs and former fighters. All the efforts falling on deaf ears, Zoom meeting. Yeah, I think you have to be very strategic about what these meetings in the future are going to be about. They should be issue-based, and you should publish statements afterwards. I mean, the problem with the more liberal media is that there's a divide in the media right now, right? So you're almost taking yourself out of that media label. You're representing advocacy of the common people, and that's really powerful. I think if you could just get yourselves all under an umbrella and simplify the statements and let people come to you if they want to hear more. What else?
Let's take the hand and then we'll go to the questions. Okay.
Yeah, just on the US, Canada, I mean, we don't have an ambassador at the moment here in Canada. One has been designated, as you well know, and you know, we're waiting for that engagement to start. Yeah, there's you know what we're seeing around the world in donor countries, a split between the head of state's office and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because ministries of foreign affairs in the West have come together with international development agencies. And there are many people, well, TPLF supporters sit in these international development agencies. So the Ministry of Foreign Affairs view and narrative has been influenced by lots of input that hasn't permeated the Prime Minister's office and president's offices. So I'm seeing that phenomena across Western donor countries. It requires a real hands-on engagement with diplomatic missions, and you know, the proposals for digital diplomacy that have been mooted by the Ethiopian government at the moment, I think are coming at the wrong time. I think the best diplomacy is one-on-one and frequent, and you know, those informal coffees and those informal cocktails, and that's what we need at the moment. So over to the questions.
Yeah, Dr. Gabeyo, your hand was up. You were the first one who had your hands up, and you're gone now. Do you have a question? Yeah, there you are. So yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Wasi. Anne has already addressed one of my questions. I had sent the question directly to her. Related to that question, Anne, I think it will be extremely helpful if you were to write something in a referee journal about the flows and limitations of the Amnesty and Human Rights Watch report. I think a person of your standing writing about it would be much better received by the international community if you know, if your colleagues can do that instead of you, of course, that would be welcome as well. I want to finish by thanking you the work you are doing on Ethiopia and the Horn of Africa. I'm sure you will continue, and I will obviously encourage you to do so. Thank you again.
So I have 3 more hands up. So if you could just ask questions, that would be great. Dr. Gabayu, I did not mean to say yours was too long. That was good. I liked it. So just short questions. Kidani is the first one. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I don't have a question, but I am one of the victims' family in Wolkite, and I left Wolkite actually when TPLF crossed the Tekeze River and invaded Wolkite for the first time. I was there. I was a young person in my 20s. So once TPLF came in, since I was a high school student and probably won't survive and know that the TPLF's history beforehand, I went to Sudan and resettled here in the United States in 1981. So I've been away for 41 years, 42 years. It's my background. And to tell you one thing is the underground imprisonments, one of the imprisonments before they start having prisons underground in Wolkite and Talant was in Tigray. There were 11 in Tigray. And my father, he was in the 70s. He was arrested and taken because he's an elderly who can lead an opposition. They just take a lot of elderlies. And luckily, they want money. And whoever has money, they can pay and get their families out. And they will be poor for the rest of their life. So luckily I was here, my sister was here. We were able to send money and get my father out. And we brought him to the United States to visit us in 1992. And what he told me is he was in prison underground in Tigray. This is just simply ground dug down and one entry. And if the prisoners are guarded by one person, and my father told me that a worm, just a ground worm, will drop into their bodies. And just to give you an idea how difficult it is and how worse the situation was. So saying that, I want to bring the attention to the team to the group who's participated in this. By the way, I am the secretary of Voice of the Victims. My chairman has made the presentation. So my question is, this group and others have to focus on countering TPLF's media coverage or all the lobbying by taking known journalists or human rights groups to the Wolkite area and interview the people who are there. They will tell you, each family member will tell you what they went through. And they may also have some what you call post-traumatic problems because of the long time that they went through. You will find more evidence to counter TPLF's evidence and address it to the world, to the United States, the United Nations, and others. It's just the way to counter TPLF has been so difficult because of their resources. I just want to mention this, and I thank you very much for being part of this discussion. That was my point to make. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I let you make that point because of who you are and the story you had to tell. So thank you so much. So at this point, Yom, I'm going to nicely ask people to make their questions short. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. I'd like to thank Professor Fitzgerald for picking up for the truth, for making the special effort to go to Ethiopia to find out about the atrocities committed by TPLF. The evidence is overwhelming of the atrocities committed by TPLF. Millions of people have been displaced in Amhara and also in Afar right now. TPLF is in Afar, even though there is humanitarian truce. And also the evidence is overwhelming that Al-Qaeda is part of Gondar for centuries. Maps that Atabiyu had showed. However, the Western media chooses to ignore it. And Western countries like the United States and Canada and many of the European countries choose to believe TPLF misinformation. Now, my question is, how do we make them understand and speak up against the atrocities committed by TPLF? And how do we get the truth out to the public, to the Western public, about the truth and atrocities committed by TPLF and all the suffering that has happened in Ethiopia? The war started by TPLF, and now they're still fighting. They're still in Afar. So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Yom. Should we take Tazara and you answer all of them together, or what would you like to do?
Yeah, do you want me to take the last one, if it can be quick?
Okay, go ahead, Tazara. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ann Fitzgerald. Sorry for mispronouncing your name. I'm participating from London, United Kingdom. I think you mentioned about the lack of information you have got about the history of Wolkai, Takare, and Seti Tomorrow. We have written a lot of books. Therefore, I don't know how far that information, documented evidence and books you have got around. I have got this book, have you seen here, The Tears of Wolkai, Gondar, and the Hamara People. This book is written by my uncle, Ato Pataya Hasegu. It's in English. We wrote this in English because for those international organizations to know deeply the history of Wolkai, Tagare, that's the massacres and the atrocities have done. Therefore, if you have the address, I would like to send you this book through your address. You will have all the information here about the history that shows which is the massacres had done so far for the last 15 years by TPLF. Therefore, you have to have a full information about the history, what has happened, because it is very important to have evidences, documented evidence, not people asking questions here and there, because I know that you need a documented evidence. Therefore, I'm happy to send you this book if you leave your address. Otherwise, if you get it, maybe if you have it in your circle, you can give her one. Therefore, this is very important when you approach the international organizations and also the people like Anna, which I'm sorry for your name.
Okay.
Therefore, I am happy to dispatch this book for you. You should not pay for that. Even I will pay for the postage. Therefore, you need such kind of documentation and information.
Thank you. Good point.
Therefore,
Thank you so much.
Put the title also in the chat for everybody else, for people who want to buy it. Thank you.
So
I will do so. It says that the Tears of Wolkai.
Yes. Thank you.
Gondar and the Amhara people. Therefore,
yes,
I'll be writing it and I'll be sending you freely. It is very important. If you need more, I'll send you also. I have got 300 books here beside me.
Okay.
If I would like
you so much.
How far we are struggling. How far we are trying to.
Thank you. You made your point. I'm sorry. So it's written. We have it. We know where to get it. So let's answer the questions and we'll go.
Okay, thank you. No, I agree. It's a terribly important piece of work.
Yes, and we have it. Yeah, we put it in there. Yeah.
So I'm just going to run down because there were a couple of questions also lodged in the chat as well. First of all, you never have to thank me for telling the truth. That's the job of an academic. I feel like it's something that we should never have had to even raise, but today's reportage is really showing that truth amongst academia does need to be discussed, and our research integrity is supposed to be our DNA, and so I think that's an expectation everybody should have from academia. Publishing on shortcomings of the report. The one issue with the journal articles and publications, and I'm afraid the problem is getting even more challenging because they have long lead times, first of all. And that's why you see everybody trying to publish in the policy literature. I'm trying to stick with the good peer-reviewed policy literature, like RUSI and the Institute for Peace and Diplomacy and the Macdonald-Laurier Institute, things like that. But you're right, these journal articles are important, but you almost have to find ways to get it out, or to get the truth out quickly, and then publish a longer piece. So, I think it's a very good idea to publish on this report, but I think I would encourage you to first publish some letters to Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International as an alliance, as one voice. Then, a longer journal article could certainly be written. It could be a consolidated response to a number of articles. Remember, this is not the first one. There was another one that was done on the basis of telephone numbers being handed to Amnesty International. And when I questioned this, I was told, there are area codes in Ethiopia, and the area codes were all part of that area. And we know that that's not the case. You can have 0911 numbers in Tigray, and you can have them in Walaita as well. So, there's lots of flaws to talk about, but I think your argument would be more powerful if you address not just one report, but triangulated the data across the publication of a number of reports. The issue about Afar, I am very, very concerned about what's going on in Afar. I went to the camps, Lake Afdera, Silsa, around Samara as well, so right across the country. I met community members of those 5 communities walking on the roads. I went as far as I could to get close to the battlefront. And what they showed me was incredible. I mean, pictures of people who had been killed over the last 3 days. There's this very well-known chap called Muhammad, who is always around the tourist area, the Smoking Mountain, the volcano. And tourists know him well. Some of you on this call might know him well. They killed him the day before I was interviewing them, and they were holding vigils for him. There was another woman who had been killed with her 3-year-old son as well. And I was being showed video footage from the areas with the artillery that was blowing up mosques. And the Afar just couldn't understand why in Konoba, one area had been hit 160 times, they said, by rocket-propelled grenades and missiles, and some very heavy weapons. And they felt that there was cultural genocide being committed. I mean, all the Qurans were being used for ablutions and ripped to shreds. All of the artifacts and their cultural specific possessions had been destroyed. The camels had all been killed. There was nothing left in these places at all. But more concernedly, there was nothing in the refugee camps. There were long queues, and I posted a picture of one example on Twitter, long queues of empty water containers. There were babies being had on the side of the road. I witnessed a woman having a child. Children who had been, the water in the north is very naturally contaminated. So in the communities, they have quite a good filtration system. But when their communities became occupied, the children had to drink the water in these naturally contaminated areas just outside of the city. And the children were dying on the way to the refugee camps. There's a great outcry to the regional state authorities as much as the federal authorities. Same was true with the Tigrayan IDPs in Jara camp. There's a lot that could be done there. And I spoke to the government afterwards and I said, for heaven's sakes, look after them. You know, they're a true voice at the moment for the country. They're the silent voice, they're the frontline voice, they're the voice that's missing from this analysis. And, you know, they must be supported the same as all IDP camps are. But the shocking thing about the Afar communities is it's just off the main road. So they're literally watching the trucks go past them and up to the Tigray region. Nobody's suggesting that there's not need across all of these communities, but you know, they need to be protected. One, they need to be given humanitarian aid. And the temperatures are really, really intense, even for them. Like they were in the 40s. And of course, they're from the highland area. So, and the children need medication. It's a very, very shocking situation up there. So whereas the Walkite situation is one that has been described as displacement, in Afar, you have displacement and atrocities and destruction, complete destruction of the communities and anything cultural. Countering media. Yeah, interviewing people. I mean, I came away from the camps that I interviewed many people in. And the first thing that came to my head was, why has this not been done yet? Some of them had been in the camps for 3 months, 3 and 4 months, but they're arriving on a daily basis. And lastly, yeah, so I think what you could do is you could issue a press statement and say, you know, all Ethiopian diaspora organizations have come together and stand united in the face of sheer disinformation concerning Ethiopia at the moment, and with, you know, to address the need to put factual-based evidence into circulation for countries wishing to partner with Ethiopia in the future, and also international media. So what you could do is issue 1- and 2-page press statements from any of these meetings that you run. Be very choosy about the meetings that you do hold. Have a committee which includes representatives from all the groups. Again, not to stand behind any political person or political party, but to stand behind the future of the country. And issue a press release after each one with links to articles, you know, things like Tears of Walkite, other peer-reviewed journal articles that you can refer to. I think that would be really powerful, and it wouldn't require a lot of work. And I hope I've answered as many questions as possible. Please feel free to contact me directly. I'm so sorry. I know it's not your Easter today. It's ours, and I'm being inundated with people downstairs at the moment. So I'll have to go take a lamb out of the oven.
I mean, thank you so much for really spending your Easter with us in a couple of hours. Thank you so very much. We do have one more question, but I don't know if you're going to be there for the question. Marta Gabriselasi, you had your hands up. Where are you? You have the floor. Marta? Well, yeah, there you are. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Marta.
Okay, 1 minute.
Are you there, Marta?
Hi, sorry, I'm at work. Thank you, Anne, for everything you commented. I joined a little late, but I just want to stress on what you're saying, to write about writing an article with all these organizations in the diaspora. National principle is a very, very important place to write an article.
Breaking up, yeah.
It didn't take us. Hello?
You're breaking up.
Okay. So we can have an article at the National Press Club, which has national and international news outlet, like more than 25 news outlets. All they need is an article, and we just have to pay some, like 400 words or some expenses there, but it's not that much. So writing an article and making the news, we can do that. We just have to know we need a specific group who can do that. Speaking in Amharic a lot is not helping us, as we see. I really stress that what Ann says we can have on behalf of the name of the organization, like this group, we have this and the also National Congress, Library of Congress, National, so we can have an event like the Tears of Wolga, the book mentioned by someone here, that can have a book review. Those kind of activities will help the others to understand the situation, involving the youth. Really in English, like this English program, English speaking people. So it's really important to write an article to make English medias like this. So I just want to stress that. So thank you, Anne, for everything you do in the past and in the future.
Thank you, Martha. So, okay, I think, do we have all the questions so far? We're done with them, yeah? So if we have the questions, sorry. Okay. I think, Mesfin, we're almost there.
I think we should let Anne go. Anne, thank you again. Everyone has said what needs to be said. We people call you an angel that's protecting Ethiopia, and I think that's not an exaggeration. To just be in that part of the country at a time where none of us dared to go was incredible. So thank you again. We'll take all the recommendations that you made. And there is a plan to release press releases. There will be an effort to mobilize the Ethiopian intellectuals to support Gondar University develop its genocide center. I mean, this is a story, this is a situation that should never happen. And this is a situation we believe that should never be forgotten as well. So that effort will continue. You are right. The Ethiopian American diaspora, although they say the same thing, they say it in different groups. We'll just make sure we'll work hard. That's all we can do. We'll work as hard as we can to get that combined message out to legislators and people who matter in this case. And absolutely, I know Helen mentioned getting organized. We have a very, very serious group of people that are now organized and working very hard to influence the coming election. A group of about from 30 states. We have a committee that's working very hard, meeting every week, and doing all kinds of groundwork to show that the Ethiopian community means something. And we obviously would work as hard as we can to get the message out. Not only the Ethiopian Americans, but the Ethiopian Friends of Ethiopia. We have there are a lot of them who are willing to join if they know a direction and a group that's dedicated to do this. So we are working on that.
Yeah.
So both comments are well taken. We appreciate the comment Helen you made, and thank you, Anne. I know you have to go. I think we'll let you go at this point. And Wasi, before we conclude the program, I would recommend that you run the report, the English report that was seen at the beginning of the program once again, so that people understand the intensity of the damage, the destruction, the evil behavior that was done by the TPLF during that period, and then we all need to make sure that we stand to fight it.
Yes.
And as we go through this process, we would ask, I mean, after we'll do all the press releases, we'll do all what Ann suggested that needs to be done. But it's very important that there are 83 people, probably another few hundred watching on the different outlets. This meeting is streaming live. We request that everybody get engaged, please. Please log in. One way to get engaged, www.apac.org. Get enraged, get in, sign up. Will connect you to all resources that you need to know. If it's the Walkite resource, we'll direct you to that area, whatever interest you may have. But you have to get engaged. People just listen and leave and feel sorry, get mad, don't sleep, couldn't sleep the whole night, and then get up the next day complaining about the same thing. It's just not going to do much of anything. We have done this for many years. Please, just log in, get engaged. We are not going to let any of this go unpunished and consider. I mean, we are in a society that actually honors and respects law and order, and we have a right to do what needs to be done in the legal way. So, Wasi.
Just before we go to the film, there's a little bit. People want to discuss a little bit of Walkite, so let's give that a few minutes. And Nugusi Mangasha is. I'll give you the floor. His hand is up, so go ahead, and then we'll do that. Go ahead.
Hi, Wasi.
Hi.
እንደነሽ አንቺንም ሆነ ይህን ያዘጋጃችሁት በሙሉ በጣም አድርጌ አመሰግናለሁ። It's a wonderful presentation. በተለይ ወልቃይት the voice of the victims of Walkite has really chronology ጠብቆ በደንብ አድርጎ ነው ያስረዳው. I think maybe this is the first time I have seen personally. Maybe it has been shown some other place, but that's wonderful. The other thing, I think Ann Fitzgerald, I think everybody thanks her. She's incredible personality. She has passion for the truth, and she's been standing for justice. She should be really an exemplary person for us. And sometimes I work myself, do I do a fraction of it what she does? I don't think I do. So that really should encourage us. ከሁሉ ግን የሚያገርመው እኔ ሚክሲንግ አክቸር በአማርኛ ብናገር ይቻላል መሰለኝ። ላይክ ሂትለር ተነስቶ ቪክቲም ሆኖ ሲናገር ወይንም የሩዋንዳ ጄኖሳይደርስ there are about አንድ 50 ሚሊዮነርስ ናቸው ሁቶች መጀመሪያን የቀመሩት የሚባለው ቱሲዎችን የፈጁ እነሱ እንደገና ቪክቲም ሆነው ቀርበው አቤት ሲሉና ያለምን የፕሮፓጋንዳ ማሽነሪ ኮንትሮል ሳያደርጉት ካን ኢማጂን that ሁልጊዜ እንደዛ ነው የሚሰማኝ and I can't even imagine, it's beyond our comprehension and imagination what this evil group have done. Walkite, as far as I know Walkite, by the way, I have stayed there maybe a year or so. Walkite was an excellent example of Ethiopia where Tigrinya speakers and Amharic speakers lived in harmony until TPLF came in 1979, as what's his name, Abiy Bello explained actually. እና የዛ አካባቢ የተካሄደ ደግሞ አትሮሲቲ እና ፍጅት really ተነግሮም አላለቀም፣ በደንብም የተመዘገበ አይመስለኝም። እኔ እንደማየው የጎንደር ሪሰርች ዘ ጉድ ስታርት ነው። አሁን ቅድም የቀረበው ደግሞ በአቶ አቢይ በተለይ የቀረበው that's a very good start, but I think we can make something out of this ለራሳችን የሚጠቅም ለምሳሌ really systematically organized የሆነ ቪዲዮዎች ቢሰሩ በዛ ላይ not only this presentation ሳይሆን አጫጭር ቪዲዮዎች it could be 10 to 15 sometimes 20 minutes long የዛን አካባቢ የተካሄደውን atrocity, the number of mass graves, number of people killed, number of people tortured, number of people displaced. I think that will be a big weapon in our hand to explain, even maybe convince some media outlets to go and do more research. I would even focus to do a short video and send it to 60 minutes so that they can send their own reporters and see these places. I think that's extremely important. እስካሁን I think ግራ የገባን ምንድነው I think effort በያለበት ዲያስፖራ ይሰራል አንድን ግን ፎከስ ሊሆነ አሁን ቅድም አንም ባለችው መሰረት ሲስተማቲክ በሆነ ግን ፕሬስ ሪሊዝም መውጣት ጋዜጣ ላይ መውጣት ቪዲዮዎችን ፕሮዲዩስ መሆን አለባቸው እሱን ፋይናንስ ማድረግ የምንችል ይመስለኛል ካረግ ደግሞ ፕሮፌሽናል በሆነ መንገድ ቢወጣ I think that's a very important ምክንያቱም ይሄንን መድረክ ይዘው መቆየት የለባቸው these are people who have that ደግሞ እኮ አትሮሲቲውን አሁንም ያካሄዱ እኮ ነው ፍጅቱን ቅድም አን የገለጸችውን በአፋርላንድ በአማራ ክልል ያንን ፍጅት ያንን እልቂት ያካሄዱ ቪክቲም ሆነው ይቀርባሉ and how can we allow that and I think in ለመቋቋም it's a good start ይመስላል ዛሬ it gave us so much eye opener maybe this meeting cannot solve that but we should have really comprehensive on a professionally produced on 10 to 15 to 20 minutes it should be several videos also not one single video testimony as ይሄን አትሮሲቲ የሚያሳይ ብናገኝ እንጠቀምበታለን election መጣ ቅድም አንዷ ሴት የቀርባ ተናገረ ነበር election እየመጣ ነው we should not really simply sit down if we have these videos we can go to our congressmen to our senators and I think we can change minds you know massive but it requires also like and persistent you know consistent you know struggle and that's actually a view I short view I would express and maybe we should get back again concrete assignment come out I would be happy to participate in this I'll be willing I'll stop there
thank you Nuguse that's wonderful we know you are communication media expert that kind of help we will all want and encourage so thank you so much for that I know we're way over time but I think there's a little bit of interest to discuss a little bit more about Welkait Dr. Gabayo you have the floor and Abi if you have anything else to add into go ahead
The recording has stopped
ነው ከዚህ ስብሰባ ቴካዌዩ በተለይ አን ካለችው በዚህ በሪፖርቱ ላይ highly focused የሆነ sharp የሆነ
This meeting is being recorded.
Of the flaws and limitations of the Amnesty and Human Rights Watch report በብዙ የኢትዮጵያውያን scholars professionals organizations endorsed የሆነ statement ይወጣ በጣም ጥሩ ይመስለኛል ብዙ ዲቴይልድ መሆን የለበት በተለይ ይሄ አንዱ ለምሳሌ የኮንፍሊክት ኦፍ ኢንተረስት ሪቪልድ ያለመደረጉ ትልቁ ዊክነስ ነው እነሱን አውጥቶ ሁለት ገጽ በማይሞላ ስቴትመንት ወጥቶ በብዙ የኢትዮጵያን ምሁራን ሪሰርቸርስ የተፈረመ ኢንዶርስ ቢሆነ ይወጣ ጥሩ ይመስለኛልና ይሄን የሚሰራ ቶሎ ብላችሁ ሰው አሳይን ብታረጉ ጥሩ ይመስለኛል መሰግናለሁ
thank you በስን እዚህ ላይ እንትን ፖይንት አለ የምትናገረው ዶክተር ገበየው መልስ እንዳለ
እንግዲህ አንድም እንደምታውቁት አይደለ ብዙዎቻችሁ አታውቁም ይሆናል ግን የአሜሪካን ኢትዮጵያንስ ፐብሊክ አፌርስ ኮሚቲ ፕሮፌሽናል ፐብሊክ ሪሌሽንስ ፈርም ቀጥሯል እና እነሱ ይሄን ስራ የሚሰሩበት ሁኔታ ማክሲማይዝ የሚደረግበት ሁኔታ ይኖራል ፐብሊክ ፕሬስ ሪሊዞችን ማውጣቱን ከናብዩ ጋር በመተባበር አሁን የዚህን ስብሰባ አውትካም በደንብ ኦርጋናይዝድ በሆነ መንገድ all that will be done professional scholars የሚለው ላይ ከዶክተር ገበየው ጋር እንነጋገራለን እዚህ ላይ I see few faces professional Ethiopian professional scholars ዶክተር ዮናስ ማለ እና ሌሎችም ሰዎች አያለሁኝ I think my challenge for Ethiopian professionals is I don't know በአሁኑ ጊዜ ይሄንን ማውጣት ካልቻል እና if we can produce at this point I don't know ምን መቼን ፕሮዲዩስ እንደምናደርግ እና ብዙ ብሬን ፓወር አለ we know that በጣም አሜዚንግ የሆኑ አርቲክሎች ይጻፋሉ ግን አሁን እየተጠየቅን ያለነው ነገር guys put your acts together እና publish something that we can use ነው የሚሉት ኢትዮጵያን የሚረዱ ሰዎች I'm sure ይሄን ቻሌንጅ ለመውሰድ ከበቂ በላይ ሰው አለ እና እኔ we make a commitment to reach out and to publish to coordinate this effort with the intellectual community with the university professors and researchers and this is something we can do without a question and we have to want to do it we will be able to do it እና ይሄንን ነገር follow up እናደርጋለን ይሄንን እና በፕሬስ ሪሊዞቹም ላይ የት እንደደረስን እናስተዋውቃለን በጣም ኢምፖርታንት ፖይንት ነው ሪሶርሳችንን መጠቀም የምንችልበት ጊዜ ላይ ያለ ነው ብዬ አምናለሁ
ኦኬ አንድ ኮሜንት ነው ያለኝ ከዛ ሌሎች አናግራለሁ I think it's important አሁን ዛሬ አንድ ዋና የተሰበሰብንበት ጎንደር ዩኒቨርሲቲ ያወጣውንና ስለ ወልቃይት ላይ ያለውን ሲቹዌሽን ለመነጋገር ነው ተነጋግረናል ግን እዛ ላይ ደግሞ እንትንም ያስፈልገናል አቋሞች ያስፈልጉናል አቋም ማለት እዚህ ተነስተን ፕሌጅ እናርግ ማለት ሳይሆን እኔ I really think the next main struggle የኢትዮጵያ ህዝብ ያለው ወልቃይት ነው ሜዳው እሱ ነው የኛ ኖርማንዲ ወይም ዋተርሉ or whatever it is እዛ ነው ያ ነው እና ያንን I think እዚህ ያለው ሰው መረዳት ያለበት ይመስለኛል ምክንያቱም TPLF ያንን ቦታ በምንም አይነት መልቀቅ አይፈልግም ይሄ ወስቱም ደግሞ አዘጋጅቶ እሱ ላይ ያፈጠጠ ነው ሲጀመር ጀምሮ አሁን ያለፈው ኤስ 1399 እሱም ቢሆን እዛ ላይ ነው ሪሊ ፎከስ ያለው እና ይሄንን ነገር መርሳት የለብንም I think እሱንም ኢንኮርፖሬት በጣም ማድረግ ያለብን ይመስለኛል ሁሉ ጊዜ በመነጋገርበት ጊዜ ሶሉሽንን በመናመጣበት ጊዜ so I think yeah support is very very important I just thought I'd go focus on that
አንድ ነገር ማለት ይችላል ትክክል አሁን ሁሌም ኢትዮጵያ በቅርብ ጊዜ አንድ ግሩፕ ይዘን ሄደን ነበር እና ያየነው ክፍተት ዩኒቨርሲቲዎችን አነጋግረናል ጎንደር ዩኒቨርሲቲ እየሰራ እንደሆነ እናውቃለን ባህርዳር ዩኒቨርሲቲ እየሰራ ያለ ስራ አለ በቅርቡ እንድንላል አዲስ አበባ ዩኒቨርሲቲ አነጋግረናል ብዙ መስራት እየተቻለ በወልቃይት ጉዳይ እና በጣም ከበቂ በላይ መረጃዎች እያሉ መስራት ያልተቻለበት ምክንያት ለኛም በጣም ግራ የሚያጋባ ነው ግን አቶ መስፍን እንዳለው ሌሎቻችሁም እንደ ሐሳብ እንደሰጣችሁት አግሬሲቭሊ ስኮላሩን መጥራት አለብን በቃ ጥሪ ማድረግ አለብን በዚህ ጉዳይ ላይ ኦፊሻሊ እንዲጽፉ እንዲሰሩ ምርምር እንዲያደርጉ ጥሪ ማድረግ ያስፈልጋል ብያምናለሁ አንዱ እሱ ነው እሱ ላይ አብረን እንሰራለን ሁለተኛው የወልቃይትን ትግል በጣም እንዲታገዝ እንፈልጋለን የወልቃይት ትግል የሁማኒታሪያን ትግል ብቻ አይደለም ወይም ሁማኒታሪያን ነገር ይሄ መድኃኒት ማቅረብ ትምህርት ቤቶችን መገንባት ውሃ ማጠጣት እንደዚህ ብቻ አይደለም ከባዱ ትግል አሁን የሚጠብቀን ከባዱ ትግል ባለን 100% እርግጠኛ ሆኜ የምነግራችሁ ያለን መረጃ የሚያሳየን ህወሓት ያለ የሌለ ኃይሉን ተጠቅሞ ወልቃይትን መያዝ በዚህ ውስጥ ከፍተኛ ካዡዋሊቲ ይጠብቀናል እስካልተዘጋጀን ድረስ ስለዚህ በዚህ ውስጥ አደገኛው ነገር ሆኖ ደግሞ ያገኘነው የመንግስት የወልቃይትን ጉዳይ እውቅና ለመስጠት ሁላችሁም በተቻልነው መጠን አንደኛ የመንግስት እውቅና ያስፈልጋል ያ ቶፒክ የወልቃይት ጉዳይ እንትን ርዕስ መሆን የለበትም የጠላት መሰባሰቢያ አጀንዳ መሆን የለበትም የትግራይ ኃይሎች ሁሉም እየተሰባሰቡ ያሉት በዚህ አጀንዳ ዙሪያ ነው ይሄ አጀንዳ መዘጋት አለበት ይሄን አጀንዳ እንዲዘጋ መንግስት የምንችለውን ሁሉ ጫና ማድረግ አለብን ሁለተኛው ከዚህ አጀንዳ መዘጋት በተጨማሪ የሚያስፈልገው ምንድነው አስፈላጊው ሁሉ ዝግጅት መድረግ እኛ ማይካድራ እንደሚመጣ አውቀን መግለጫ አውጥተናል የማይካድራ ጭፍጨፋ እንደሚመጣ አውቀን ለመንግስት ብለናል ለኢትዮጵያ ህዝብ ጮኸናል የመንግስት ጦር ልዩ ጥበቃ እዛ አካባቢ ይደረግ ህወሓት ተስፋ ቆርጧል ይሄን ያደርጋል ይያል ከኤክስፒሪየንሳችን ተነስተን ጽፈናል አሁንም የምናውቀው ነገር አሁንም በተደጋጋሚ እየተናገርን ያለ ነው በየሚዲያው ህወሓት ህወሓት ብቻ አይደለም ሁሉም የትግራይ ኃይሎች ከሌ ሳንል ሁሉም የትግራይ ኃይሎች አሁን ሚዲያም ላይ እየወጡ የሚናገሩ ሰዎችን ተሰሟቸው ይሆናል በተለያየ ጊዜ አንድ ላይ የሚሰሩት ያለ የሌለ ኃይል ተጠቅሞ ወልቃይትን ሰብሮ መግባት ወልቃይትን ሰብሮ መግባት ማለት ሁሉም ነገር ይቀየራል። የኢትዮጵያ ጉዳይ አሁን እንደምናወራው የምናወራበት አይደለም። ቶታሊ ይቀየራል። እና ይሄን ነገር ሁላችንም ባለ በሌላ ኃይል ወልቃይት ላይ አሁንም ጠንካራ የሆነ ዝግጅት እንዲደረግ ጠንካራ የሆነ ህዝቡን ብቻ ሳይሆን አጠቃላይ የኢትዮጵያ ህዝብ ሞቢላይዝ የማድረግ የኢትዮጵያ ህዝብ በአንድነት እንዲቆም በዚህ ጉዳይ ላይ ግፊት ማድረግ ያስፈልጋል። ሶስተኛ እዚህ ላይ ማንሳት የምፈልገው አሁንም ያባለን መረጃ ሱዳን ውስጥ ያሉ የሱዳን ከትግራይ ወጣው ሱዳን የገቡ የህወሓት የጦር መሪዎች ትግራይ ገብተዋል ተመልሰው። እንዴት አናቅም። ሱዳን ውስጥ የገቡ ሸሽተው ከወልቃይት ከትግራይ ሸሽተው ሱዳን ውስጥ የገቡ የወያኔ ሰዎች አመራሮች አውሮፓ ገብተዋል፣ ወደ አውሮፓ ወስደዋቸዋል። እና ይሄ ምንድነው የሚያሳየን? አጠቃላይ እየተሰራው ያለው ነገር ከሱዳን ሲመላለስ የነበረ አውሮፕላን ነበር አንድ ወቅት በሌሊት እኒህ ነገሮች በጣም ከፍተኛ ክፍተት እንዳለ አሁንም የወልቃይትን ሰብሮ ለመያዝ ከኃይላቸውን ወደ ትግራይ እያሰባሰቡ እንደሆነ ከፍተኛ መረጃ አለ። እነዚህ ሰዎች አመራሮቻቸውን ራሱ የአመራር ክፍተት ስላለባቸው ከፍተኛ ጉዳት ስለደረሰባቸው ባለፈው ጦርነት አመራሮቻቸው በጣም በኃይል ስለተመታ አመራር የጦር መሪዎቻቸው ኢቭን ከኢትዮጵያ ውጭ ያሉትን እያስገቡ ነው። ሊገቡ የሚችሉት ብቸኛው መንገድ በዌስተርን ኤድ አማካኝነት ሌላ ምንም መንገድ የለም። በእግር አይገቡም። ይሄን እናውቃለን። በወልቃይትም በኩል አይገቡም፣ በትግራይም በኩል በኤርትራም በኩል አይገቡም። እና ይሄ እየተደረገ ያለው በእርዳታ ስም የሚሄደው ነገር አሁንም ከተጠያቂነት ውጭ ነው። የሄዱት መኪኖች ሄደው ያደርሳሉ፣ አይመለሱም። የባለፈውን ጦርነት እናውቃለን። የተዋጉት የእርዳታ መኪናዎች ገብተው እነዛ የእርዳታ መኪኖች ጭነው በገቡት ነዳጅ እና መኪኖቹ ወታደር እያመላለሱ ተዋጊ እያመላለሱ ነው የወጉን፣ እናውቃለን። አሁንም እየተደረገ ያለው ዝግጅት እኛም ባለን መረጃ እስከ ሰኔ ያለ ዝግጅት አለ። ስለዚህ በአጠቃላይ የወልቃይትን ትግል ዘርፈ ብዙ ትግል ነው። ይሄን ትግል ሁላችሁም በምትችሉት ሁሉም በሚችለው ሁሉ እንዲያግዝ እንጠይቃለን። ልሳነ ግፋንን ኮንታክት ማድረግ ትችላላችሁ። ኢሜል በዛ አስቀምጫለሁ። ሴም ታይም ከዚህ ከኮኦርዲኔተር ከናቶ መስፍን ጋር እየሰራ ነው፣ ከሁሉም ጋር እየሰራ ነው። ፕሊዝ ሪች አውት አስ እና ሌትስ ወርክ ቱጌዘር። እሱን ለማለት ፈልጌ ነው። አመሰግናለሁ።
ታንክ ዩ ተዘራ አጠር እያደረጋችሁ ከዛም
አመሰግናለሁ። እንግዲህ በጣም ደስ ብሎኛል፣ ምክንያቱም እናንተን ለማግኘት ብዙ ጥረት አድርጌ ነበረ። እንግዲህ አዲስ ዌብሳይታችሁን አክሰስ ማድረግ አልቻልኩም። ግን ምንድነው እናንተ አሜሪካ ላይ ነው ትግላችሁ ቤዝ ያደረገው፣ አውሮፓ ውስጥ ምን እየተደረገ ነው ያለው የሚለውን ቅድም አቶ አብዩ ተናግሮታል። እኛ እዚህ እየታገልን ነው። በተለይ የወያኔ ቤዝ ያለው ዩናይትድ ኪንግደም ነው እና ማወቅ አለባችሁ ይሄን። እና እናንተ ናሽናሊ ብቻ ሳይሆን ኢንተርናሽናሊ የኔን ኢንተርቪው ብታዩ ሰሞኑን በተለያዩ ዌብሳይቶች እየተደረጉ ያሉት ከዚህ ያሉት የወያኔ ዋናው ቤዙ የመለስ ቤተ መንግስት ያለው ለንደን ውስጥ ነው። ምን እየተደረገ ነው ያለው? እዚህ ሀገር የምታገለው እኔ ብቻ ነኝ የአውሮፓ ውስጥ። እዚህ ያሉትን ፓርላመንታሪያን ሙሉ አክሰስ ማደርገው እኔ ነኝ። ይሄ መጽሐፍ ሲጻፍ ለብዙ ኤምፒዎች አድርሻለሁ። ብቻዬን ነው መከራዬን እያየሁ ያለሁት። አውሮፓ ውስጥ ያለውን አላወቃችሁትም። ወያኔ እየገባ ያለው በእንግሊዝ በኩል ነው። ፕሊስ እባካችሁ ትግላችሁን ኢንተርናሽናል ያድርጉት። እኛ እናቶ ታያ ሰጉን አይታችሁ ከሆነ እናቶ ዳኛው ለስላሴ ሁሉ ሙተዋል፣ የምታውቋቸው ከሆነ በዚህ ትግል ማለት ነው። የምታውቋቸው ከሆነ እነሱ ብዙ ነገር ተውልን አልፈዋል። ስለዚህ እናንተ ደግሞ ናሽናሊም እንደገና ሌሎን ብሔረሰቦች ማነሳሳት ማወቃል እንዲያውቅ ማድረግ አለባችሁ። አፋሩን፣ ኦሮሞውንም ቢሆን ሌላውንም ቢሆን ደቡብንም ቢሆን ስለዚህ ጉዳይ እንዲያውቅ ማድረግ አለባችሁ። አቅም የላቸውም ኢንፎርሜሽን። ስለዚህ ናሽናሊ ኢንተርናሽናል ለመስራት ሞክሩ ፕሊዝ። እኛ አውሮፓ ውስጥ እየተበላን ያለ ነው እና በተቻለ መጠን ስራችሁን ቅድም አቶ በላይ ትልቅ ነገር ተናግሯል። ከሱዳን በኢሚግሬሽን ምክንያት ወደ በዚህ በአሳይለም ምክንያት እየገቡ ነው ያሉት አሁን ወደ አውሮፓ ሱዳን ያሉት በሊቢያ አድርገው አሁን በፖርቹጋል ነው እየገቡ ያሉት ምክንያቱም የፈረንሳይ ስለተዘጋ በፖርቹጋል በኩል እየመጡ ነው ያሉት ባለስልጣኖች ወታደሮች ጀነራሎች ሁሉ ገብተዋል እዚህ ኢትዮጵያ ፕሊስ ባካችሁ ስራችንን ኢንተርናሽናል እናድርገው ከዛ ውጪ አሁን ደግሞ የኢትዮጵያን አሁን ናሽናል ዲያሎግ የተባለው እንዴት ነው አፕሮች የምናደርገው የሚሰራ ከሆነ ናሽናል ዲያሎጉ ሰራም አልሰራም እነዚህን ቡድኖች እንዴት ነው አፕሮች ማድረግ የምንችለው ምክንያቱም ሁሉንም ቡድን ፖዚቲቭሊ ነው መቅረብ ያለበት ያ ኢንፎርሜሽናችንን ለዚህ ቡድን መስጠት አለብን ማስረጃውን መስጠት አለብን ለተለያየ ደግሞ ተቃዋሚ ቡድኖች ከዚህ ከብልጽግና ውጪ ያሉትንም አፕሮች ማድረግ መቻል አለባችሁ እንዲያውቁ ከይዙን ማለት ነው ብልጽግናንም ቢሆን ፖዚቲቭሊ መታገል ያስፈልጋል ማሳወቅ ያስፈልጋል ምክንያቱም ዘጊባስ ዲፒር ኤንድ ብላይንድ አይስ ነው እኛ የምናደርገው ነገር እና ይሄን ሁሉ ኢንትሪግ ማወቅ አለባችሁ እኛ ጎንደር ነው የተወለድነው የወልቃይትን ጉዳይ እናውቀዋለን በሃፓም ጊዜ ታግለናል ሁሉን ነገር እናውቀዋለን
ኦኬ
እንረዳዳ ለማለት ነው
እሺ በጣም ኦኬ ታንክ ዩ አምሳሉ በላይ unmute yourself oh my god አምሳሉ በላይ ቢኒያም አዋሽ አብዩ መርድ ከዛ እናቆመዋል I think ይበቃል መሰለኝ go ahead አምሳሉ
እሺ በጣም አመሰግናለሁ በዚህ ውይይት በመሳተፌም በጣም ደስ ብሎኛል ብዙ ኢንፎርሜሽን አግኝቻለሁ ግን እኔ ለየት ያለ ነው መጠየቅ መፈልገው ምክንያቱም ዋሲ አንቺም ስትናገሪ ሰማው አቶ አብዩም ሲናገር የሰማሁት ወልቃይት የኢትዮጵያ የመዳን ወይም የመሞት መሰረት ነው እያደረጋችሁ የነገራችሁም እኔም እንደዛ ነው የምረዳው ግን በጣም በሚገርም ሁኔታ ውጭ ያለው ዳያስፖራ ወልቃይትን ብቻ ሳይሆን አክቹአሊ ሀገራችን እንድትቀጥል ለማድረግ ከፍተኛ የሆነ ሚና እየተጫወተ እንዳለ አውቃለሁ በአካባቢም የማየው ነገር ስላለ ግን በዚህ እኛ የምናደርገው እንቅስቃሴ ኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ ያለው ቤታችን ካልተስተካከለ የኛ ተጽዕኖ የተፈረከሰ ግንብ እንደዚያ ማለት ነው የሚታየኝ እኔ ምክንያቱም አገሬን አሁን በቅርብ ጊዜ ነው የመጣው በሚገርም ሁኔታ ያንዳንዱ ክልል ራሱን የቻለ ኤንቲቲ ራሱን የቻለ መንግስቱ ነው እንደውም ደሴም ፓርቲ የብልጽግና ፓርቲ ራሳቸው በሽኩቻ የየክልሉ ፓርቲዎች በሽኩቻ እንዳሉ ነው የሚታየኝ እኔ I think this is obvious ሁላችሁ የምታውቁ ሊሆን ይችላል እና ታዳኛ አገራችን ለማዳን እየሞከርን እኛ መንግስት ራሱ የራሱን ሀውስ in order እንዲያመጣ ተጽዕኖ ልናደርግ የምንችልበት መንገድ ልንፈጥር እንችላለን ወይ ይህንን ማድረግ ብንችል ናት ወልቃይትን ማለቴ ኢትዮጵያን በአጠቃላይ የሚታደግ ስራ ልንሰራ እንችላለን ግን በኢትዮጵያ መንግስት ላይ ልናተርፈው ልንነጭንበት የምንችለው ተጽዕኖ ምን ይመስላችኋል በዚህ በኩል እኔ ለራሴ ስለሚያስቸግረኝ አይቸም ስለመጣው ሀገሬን በጣም ስለሚያስቸግረኝ በዚህ በኩል አንድ ሐሳብ ብትሰጡበት ደስ ይለኛል አመሰግናለሁ
Thank you. So I still see Helen Epstein is still here and by the way Helen is a journalist and she's really she's published in the New York Times and all those first year magazines that do not want to see us so we're really honored to have her here so it would be good if some of the discussion now can also happen in English I thought she had gone when I didn't see it so Binyam you're the next and go ahead you're the next speaker I'm sorry your point go ahead Binyam.
Thank you
Binyam yeah
hello can you hear me
yes
okay thank you Wasi so I'll just speak in English I'm glad that Helen is still with us
come close you're low your voice is very low a little bit louder go ahead
okay voice actually. And can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I was just going to point maybe to two things. To Abiyu, thank you so much for your presentation. I was actually driving and it was absolutely shocking, absolutely shocking. And it's surprising because this is something that most of us should know about what happened in Walqait Agade. So part of the challenge is to make visible something that was deliberately hidden from the public, and to make it visible in a way that obviously is going to help in the healing process and bringing justice to Ethiopians. So that's an Ethiopian family-based activity. The second aspect, I think, is an important aspect, which is to make this visible for two purposes. One, to reframe the accusation of genocide that's been labeled on Ethiopia and Ethiopian government, to actually identify the actual practices of genocide that have happened in Ethiopia, or at least massacres, ethnic-based massacres, and other types of crimes. And the second thing I think, which is very important, is that any analysis, listening to Abiyu, is really horrifying, not only for the violence and the degradation that the people of Walqait suffered, but also the nature of the TPLF as an organization. It exposes this organization from a very early moment in their behavior that they have shown, for instance, in Afar and Amara, which has been published, by the way, by John Abiyank in the Netherlands. There's perhaps several more that's going to be published that comes out. But so this is a very important aspect of not just simply alluding to the Ethiopian government's designation of the TPLF as a terrorist. That's just a matter of legalese. But I think the actual practice, Ato Abiyu is correct. There is no such thing as Western Tigray. In fact, when the TPLF came to power in Tigray, they started to divide the map, calling Eastern, Southern, Northern, and then Western, that area which they incorporated from Gondar as Western. So I come from Tigray. I am a person of Tigray, and Tigrayan population are not thieves. They also are not bestial in the way in which the TPLF has operated. The interest of the people of Tigray is to live in harmony, to live anywhere they want in Ethiopia. And in fact, the history of that region has been seasonal migration from what's called Agame Kullil, or province in Tigray, eastern part of Tigray, to Humara as seasonal laborers. There's been no recorded incident ever of Tigrayans being killed, massacred, or in any way discriminated in that historical period that we know. So this introduction of an ethnic-based racial policy by the TPLF is something that is actually making it extremely difficult for Tigrayans to live within Ethiopia in ways that are not going to be associated with this criminal organization. So I think it's a very important activity, what you are doing, what you are exposing, what you are showing. And so just very quickly, I don't want to take too much of your time, but I wanted to point out the two things that you mentioned, which I think are very important, and I'm also very worried about, which is that the status of the people of Walqait, they don't need research to tell them who they are. They know who they are. They know who their families are. So that's not a question of whether Walqait is Walqait or whether it's part of Gondar. The question really is whether the government, which now is a reform government, is going to recognize this place and these people's demands. And that's what I'm very afraid of, because both the US and the TPLF have an interest in making sure that they have this outlet to Sudan, as you mentioned. So the gentleman that just mentioned this issue of having pressure on the Ethiopian government to make sure that it does not compromise the issue of Walqait in political bargaining is a must, as Wasi had written in her article, a red line. That has to be a red line. Lastly, I do agree with this issue of importance of academics and others, opinion makers participating, using evidence, and writing and having discussions. In that spirit, in the next 2 weeks or so, we will be organizing something in the Institute of Genocide and Mass Atrocities at State University of New York. I hope to get in touch with Ato Abiyu and his group to particularly have a similar presentation to a wider audience in an academic setting to talk about these atrocities, who committed them, why they committed them, what the evidence is, etc. So I do agree that we have to move forward in a very concerted fashion, everybody according to their ability. And so I would like to also reach out and work on these projects. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good, very enlightening. Thank you so much. Ato Abiyu?
Okay, I think I should speak in English, right? I think there's someone.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll be very brief. I follow actually what Ato Biniam and the earlier speaker said, but I'll be very brief. I think Wolkite, unfortunately, is the victim of two things. One is history. Of course, the history is associated with TPLF. And the other thing is really structural because of the ethnic federalism. It still is having issues because the government, as they eloquently said it, doesn't come out and say, look, this is part of Ethiopia and there shouldn't be any interference in our national affairs, and stand firm, against the Western governments, especially who are echoing this Western Tigray myth, which is really non-existent. And I think we have really a problem, in some ways, a challenge maybe, that we have to close the gap between this movement in the diaspora and the government, because there has to be a national leadership. There has to be clarity of purpose. And that's the only way, you can fight and defend, basically the Wolkite people. And also, in fact, if you see the Wolkite people as Ethiopian people, not just Wolkite or not just Amhara, but it's an issue, a national issue, we really have to frame it that way and tackle, all this Western conspiracy along with the TPLF. And I think that's really where the crux of the matter is. I think we really have to discuss that maybe at some point. If you want to have a strategy, you have to elevate this to the national level, just like the speaker said earlier. And the government has to be clear. There should not be ambiguity, because in some ways, I think what I see is there is really a sort of playing it both ways. Like, for instance, if you take the issue of Raya, at some point they were saying it's part of Amhara or it's part of Tigray, nobody knows. And recently, 2 weeks ago, I think they came out and they said, this is really something that has to be settled by the federal council, whatever, by the constitution. And they might, I'm afraid, they might also consider that, somebody mentioned it, in the case of Wolkite, unless the government comes out and stand firm and say to the Western powers, this is interference in our internal affairs. And Wolkite has history, which is evident, actually. There is tons of history to tell that, it wasn't really part of Tigray. But by the way, in their manifesto, they go far. They go to Johannes. And in fact, they're saying, actually, Minilik is the one who created this thing, because, if you go that far, I mean, there's no break, in terms of history. But I think, to make it short, we really have to close the gap we may have perceptually. I think we have to have the same mindset with the government. They have to be firm and stand out, to defend, the national sovereignty as well, not just the Wolkite people.
Yeah. Thank you. Tomerik, you're next.
Thank you, Wasim, and thank you the rest of the organizers. I'm really satisfied. I'm really happy with this well-organized and well-informative session. The issue of Wolkite, as has been said by many of the speakers, is a decisive issue for the unity of Ethiopia. No question about it. It's a central issue. One of the things that I think Wayana is trying to struggle is to bring the Wolkite issue as a bargaining point. So we need to understand that. God forbid, if they have the upper hand, I'm sure it's a really devastating thing. When Kafany was set up in the late 70s, as indicated by Abiyu, there was a certain gentleman, I'm not quite sure about the name, Ato Sabara Bayenabi Towling or something like that. that the ETPLF brought him from Umdurman from Sudan to Tigray. And that guy, when they brought him, it was a winter, the season was a winter, and the Kaze was full, the Kaze River was full, and he dived into the river. And I don't think they got caught of him. I wish Abiyu say something about it. In the same way, there was a parliament member by the time of Haile Selassie. Again, I'm not sure about his name. It's Daniel Selassie or somebody else who was in the parliament. He has tons of humongous evidences with respect to Wolkite. I wish also he made a comment on that. Finally, I want to make a suggestion that the issue of Wolkite should be the third or the fourth agenda for APAC. I know the first agenda of APAC is relations between Ethiopia and the USA, that's improvement. The second is the election. The third is what is now being busy with HR 60s and other draft laws. The fourth for APAC, the fourth agenda for APAC, to my opinion, should be the issue of Wolkite, because that's an issue of Ethiopia. It's not an issue of one province. It's not an issue of a certain people, but it's an issue of the entire nation. That's where the Ethiopia's sovereignty and unity lies on. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. So I think we're 3 hours almost, Mesfin, and I think we probably do need to wrap up so you could answer his question and tell us, which way we're going, some of the things that have been discussed and brought up. But for me, I really want to thank everyone in Abiyu and the presenters. But go ahead, Mesfin. I think you need to do the wrap up.
No, I think first, obviously, to thank you everyone for sticking, making your giving us your Saturday afternoon. Okay, so now the issues that were discussed are important issues. The reason why we have this meeting is the Ethiopian American Public Affairs Committee, along with its all of the Ethiopian diaspora organizations that we are working together. Like, Glenn, of course, in WICAN, in all the different organizations. Alamau ሲነሳም ጀምሮ ኢትዮጵያና አሜሪካን is just advance the Ethiopian American relationship ነው ያለው እና ይሄም ማለት የኢትዮጵያን እና የአሜሪካን ሪሌሽንሺፕ አድቫንስ እናደርጋለን ስንል ለኢትዮጵያ ኢንትረስት እንሞጋታለን ማለት ነው። That's really the reason. Now, when you look into what that means, anything that impacts Ethiopia and which is በዩኤስ ገቨርንመንት አድቮኬት የሚደረግ አሁን ክሊርሊ ዛሬ ዲስከስ እንደተደረገው የወልቃይት ኢሹ የአሜሪካን ፕሮብሌም ነው፣ ፖቴንሻል ፕሮብሌም። የወልቃይት ኢሹ የኢትዮጵያ ችግር ነው። So it really is consistent to the mission of the organization to make sure that the United States gets that one right. And it's also consistent to the mission of the organization to make sure the Ethiopian government get that one right. How do we do that? What are the best strategies to implement this? That's why we need the thinkers of ኢትዮጵያም ሆነ ኢትዮጵያዊ ያልሆነ thinkers አንድ ጋር ተሰባስበው ይሄንን the best solution ምንድን ነው የሚለውን ፕሮዲውስ ማድረግ መቻል አለብን። ቅድም የተነሳ ነገር አለ። የኢትዮጵያን መንግስት እንዴት ነው የምናግዘው የሚል ጥያቄ ተነስቷል። Well, we have to እዚህ ያለነው ሰዎች ማሰብና ፕሮፖዝ ማድረግ በጣም ሚኒንግፉል የሆነ ዝም ብሎ እንትን ሳይሆን just ኦብጀክቲቭ የሆነ ሪያሊስቲክ የሆነ ሚኒንግፉል የሆነ ሶሉሽን ፕሮፖዝ ማድረግ መቻል አለብን እና እኛ ከእንግዲህ ይህ የኢትዮጵያን ዲያስፖራ ውጭ ያለው ይህንን ፕሮፖዝ የምናደርገውን ሶሉሽን ስናቀርብ ለአሜሪካን መንግስት is from both countries interest ነው እና የአሜሪካን መንግስት አርግ እንደማረግ ያለብህ ወይም ተሳስታችኋል ይሄን ማድረግ የለባችሁም እንደሚባለው ኢኳሊ የፖሊሲ ስህተት ሲኖር የኢትዮጵያና የአሜሪካን ግንኙነት እንዲሁም በአጠቃላይ የኢትዮጵያን ህዝብ የማይጠቅም ፖሊሲ ነው የምትከተሉት በሚል ግን ምንድነው መከተል ያለብን ሲሉ ምንድነው የሚባል ነገር ይሄ ዲያስፖራው ፕሮዲዩስ ማድረግ መቻል አለበት እና ለዚህ ነው ፕሊዝ ጌት ኢንጌጅድ የምንለው we need everybody's brain power to come to a solution that's workable እና there are enough brain power to do that እና ይሄንን ይሄ ውይይት ይቀጥላል እንዳለችው ተነጋግረን መበተን ሳይሆን ተነጋግረን ታንጂብል የሆነ actionable steps ላይ መስማማት መቻል አለብን actionable steps መደረግ አለባቸው እና everyone has to take responsibility to make sure those actionable steps are taken እኛ እንዳልኩት የፐብሊሲቲ ላይ ነው ሰዎቹ የሚሰንትን የሚያደርጉት እኛ I think we are pretty okay at this point በደንብ አድርጎ በዲጂታል ፍሮንቱም በሆነ ባሉት የፐብሊክ ሪሌሽንስ ሚዲያ እየተቋቋምናቸው ያለ ነው ብዬ ነው ማምነው በአሁኑ ጊዜ ሚዲያው ቲር 1 ሚዲያ አሁንም ከፖሊሲ ጋር የተገናኘ ነገር ስለሆነ we have to continue to fight we have to be consistent we have to have our guns targeted the right way and then we have to be very reasonable and not respectful in our approach to people whom we are challenging their ideas እና ይሄንን ማድረግ እንቀጥላለን please log in sign up እና let's just be a player እነሱ በኃይል በተባበረ ሁኔታ ነው የሚያደርጉት እኛ we have enough resource enough capacity enough በሁሉም አንፃር financial resourceም ከሁሉም በላይ ያለን human resourceም አለን intellectual resourceም አለን we just have to pull it together and now just that's all I will say we would continue and yeah we would fulfill our responsibilities we are taking this very seriously we need your help now please log in sign in assignment እንከፋፈል የአሳይንመንት ይሰጥ ሁሉም ሰው ኮንትሪቢዩት ያርግ የተባሉት ነገሮች next steps ምንድናቸው የሚለውን we are going to announce in the coming በሚቀጥለው ሳምንት ውስጥ ማክሰኞ ዕለት ይኖራል follow up meeting with the APAC and Glen group to produce the next steps in working documents በዚህ ላይ ላላችሁት ሁሉ አሳይንመንት ልንሰጣችሁ እንችላለን ቮለንቲር አድርጉ give us your information register go to apac.org እና be part of it እና there is nothing that cannot be done guys በጣም ያነሱ ግሩፖች ናቸው አሁን እንደምታዩት ለምሳሌ አንድ ይሄን ከመጨረሳችን በፊት የአትላንታ ያለው የኢትዮጵያን አሜሪካንስ ግሩፕ ሰሞኑን ያደረጉትን አይታችሁታል the TPLF paid agents confused አድርገው የአትላንታን local senator they passed the resolution condemning Ethiopia condemning the whole ጠቅላላ የሚያደርጉትን ነገር አውግዘው ህግ አስተላለፉ what did the folks in Atlanta did they came together and then they went step by step process by process እያንዳንዷን የሴኔተሯ ጽፋ ያጸደቀችውን they disproved every line by line to her they told her you are totally wrong እና ሴትዮዋ መጣ እንባ እየተናነቃት ነው apologize አድርጋ ሪዞሉሽኑን ተሳስቼ ነው የጻፍኩት እና I'm going to make sure that's condemned እና ደግሞ thank you for not just ዝም ብላችሁ ተሳድባችሁ ምናምን ልትተውት ትችል ነበር that's not what you did you invited me you showed me where I went wrong እና ሁላችሁም I don't know እንግዲህ ብኛ በየካውን ከሌጅስሌተሮቹ ጋር እየተገናኘን ኢንተራክት ስለምናደርግ አንደርስታንድ አድርገናቸዋል ያላቸው አንደርስታንዲንግ ሌቨል ሰዎቹ ኤክስፕሎይት ያደረጉት is the weakness of the ተመራጮቹና ህግ አውጪዎቹ ሰዎች ህግ አስፈጻሚዎቹ የራሳቸው ሁኔታ አለ ግን ህግ አውጪዎቹ ሰዎች ብዙ የሚያውቁት ነገር የለም ያንን ዊክነስ ፈልገው ነው እነዚህ ሰዎች ኤክስፕሎይት አድርገው ይሄን ሁሉ ችግር የፈጠሩበት so it can be fixed guys absolutely can be fixed again we just have to get focused we just can't get tired we just have to work together እና እኛ heavy load ለመሸከም ready ነን ግን እርዳታ ያስፈልገናል and when you ask please help us እና follow up ስብሰባዎቹ ላይ outcomeዎች ሪፖርት የሚደረግበት ሁኔታ ይኖራል እና ሁሉም እንደተባለው ይህ ሁኔታ በወልቃይት ላይ ያለው ሁኔታ ሬድ ላይን ዛት ካኖት ቢ ክሮስድ የዋሲ አርቲክል ላይ በደንብ ክሊርሊ አርቲኩሌት እንዳደረገችው it's bad for everybody እኛ ለዩናይትድ ስቴትስ መጥፎ ነው ለኢትዮጵያ መጥፎ ነው ለዓለም መጥፎ ነው በአጠቃላይ ያ ሁኔታ ለሁሉም ሰው ጥሩ አይደለም እና reasonable minds have to come down እና come with a solution ነው የሚባለው and I will get there thank you everyone I think Wasi if we run I would like to ask you to run that report while እሱን ስንጨርስ መጨረሻ ላይ የመጣችሁ ሰዎች አላችሁ ሊንኩን ምንልክላችኋለን ግን የሪፖርት የተነበበው ሪፖርት is very important that everyone really be understand ማድረግ ይገባል ያንን ሰመራይዝ የተደረገውን ሪፖርት እና እሱን እያሰማን በዛው ስብሰባን ብናጠቃልለው መልካም ነው
Okay, ከላይ can you turn the video on? በዚህ ጨርሰናል ማለት ነው እና በጣም እናመሰግናለን ያው ከላይ ቪዲዮን ኦን አድርግልን
Okay.
if people go ቀደም ብላችሁ ያያችሁት መሄድ የሚፈልጉ ካሉ ሊሄዱ ይችላሉ ግን ቁጭ ብሎ ማየት ከፈለጉ it's a very very important report እና ሱስተሚውን ድረስ HR 6600 እና ያንን የሴኔት ቢሉን አሁንም ተቃውሞ it's very very dangerous ምንም የተደበቀ ነገር የለም you know we have to continue to fight that
It is known that the people of Tigray and Gondar have a long history of the same identity. I've also shared a common history, culture, and faith in defending the values and sovereignty of Ethiopia. However, the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, a rebel far-left group, from its inception, had a plan to systematically upend this relationship with the Amara people and went on a campaign to eradicate and weaken the Amara people and sever its relationship with the people. After 1992, the guerrillas forcibly annexed Walkait, Tsagade, and Talamt without legal action and without public dialogue. The importance of this study is as follows. There have been a number of complaints and grievances following the TPLF's annexation of the areas of Walkait, Tsagade, and Talamt since 1992. Human rights abuses have widely occurred, and numerous witnesses and evidence seems to show crimes against humanity. Thousands of residents have been displaced, massacred, and kidnapped to undisclosed locations. Identified linguistics and human rights abuses have also endured as well. The local community has taken the issue to the Federation Council and beyond. Walkait, Tsagade, and Talamt claim that they are in fact Gondare, and of Gondar origin, and not Tigrayan, and for decades have expressed that they have been dealt in the most inhumane way and have been living in subjugation and suppression. The TPLF on the 6th day of the Ethiopian government's crackdown on November 9th, 2020, committed a horrific massacre which took place in the town of Maikadra and its surrounding areas. Through verified reports and evidence, more than 1,500 people were massacred. The aforementioned incidents and crimes done in Walkait, Tsagade, and Talamt are enough for the University of Gondar to start a comprehensive research. The main objective of this study is to scientifically investigate the social, human, and other atrocities that took place in Walkait, Tsagade, and Talamt communities during the TPLF regime. The study covered a number of methodologies, including 912 households, as well as access to police, courts, health, education, finance, land administration, religious institutions, secret prisons, mass graves, and caves. Data was collected using keen formal interviews, focus group discussions, documentary evidence, field observations, visual evidence, and GPS locations. Many crimes were institutionalized and structured, so the study team used the snowball technique to find out clues. It is a study that took more than a year to compile, but there are some issues which have not been summarized yet, and the current findings of mass graves has been comprehensively looked at and needs to be reported urgent press conference today. Since then, studies have shown that there was a complex conflict between the Amaras of Walqait, Tagadi, and Talamt against the invading TPLF cadres. In addition, more than enough information has been obtained to ensure the TPLF went to great lengths to institutionalize and structurally change the identity of the local community and inhabitants. For example, there are numerous people who had changed their Amharic names to Tigrinya in many institutions and places. It's been widely observed that speaking Amharic, writing letters in Amharic, and naming institutions and organizations in Amharic led to imprisonment and even executions. With that being said, though, in Tigrayan cities such as Mekelle, the capital, Shire, and Adwa, listening to Amharic music, reading and writing in Amharic are rights that were observed and normalized, but in the annexed areas of Amara, namely Walqait, Tagadi, and Talamt, it was a high crime to do something of that sort. Studies show that the TPLF did not settle in Walqait, Tagadi, and Talamt, but instead invaded it and started an occupation. This is obvious because the semi-automatic wielding TPLF rebels and founding members of the organization later became investors and took over large tracts of land by displacing, killing, and eliminating at all costs the existing community. As a result, the existing population had been uprooted and dispersed in neighboring villages in the Amara region, in different states in Ethiopia, and around the world. And the team here has gathered evidence of many such cases. It's clear from the team's findings that thousands who did not have the opportunity to flee were arrested and killed in broad daylight. The study identified more than a dozen major massacres in Walqait, Tagadi, and Talamt, including the most recent one in Maikadra. Some of these can be seen in the findings, and the team would like to call upon experts of relevant institutions to discharge their responsibilities through forensic examinations and other scientific evidence to make these atrocities known to the public. The main reason for the press release, even though the full report of the study is ongoing, is the fact that it is necessary to make a public and urgent statement of the serious criminal, moral, and humanitarian issue that are seen in the gruesome crimes that was committed. Although the full confirmation and full extent of the findings will be seen at the end of the study, it is possible to draw a summary from the current facts. The team has direct evidence of secret locations of mass graves, the time of the massacre or the massacres, testimony of the family and the surrounding community, who was in control of the area during the aforementioned time, eyewitnesses who witnessed mass shootings and burials, evidence and witness accounts of members who worked with the TPLF, the well-known manifesto and the overall aims of the aforementioned organization, public massacres, killings, kidnappings, and human rights abuses committed before the TPLF left the government, speeches and remarks by top TPLF leaders, public and secret meetings on Walqait, and officers in Maikadra, as well as Obo, Moving forward, there needs to be a concerted effort by all parties to bring the perpetrators to justice. Many families and loved ones who have lost their relatives to these heinous genocidal crimes, and the study team would like to bring forth some urgent tasks to shed light on what happened. The study team urges the following: going to the actual scenes of these gruesome crimes, government, judiciary officials, forensic investigators, archaeological investigations, and Human Rights Commission must do a proper investigation. Finding closure for those who have been affected, resolving the long-standing issues, prosecuting the perpetrators, educating the next generation, and ensuring that people who commit such crimes of this sort in the future will be held accountable. To ensure that such findings are not a one-off phenomenon, the study team is requesting that the University of Gondar open a genocide center and ensure that the remains of the victims of the Holocaust-like tragedy are properly collected and placed in a museum as a lesson for future generations. And finally, urge the media to understand the gravity and severity of these crimes. and take the responsibility to make these findings accessible to all concerned and all media outlets so that the lives of those affected are not lost in vain, but so that justice can.
Okay, good evening. Tanahulu.
Let him play the song until these people go, if he can.
Oh,
No.
እኔ ወጥቻለሁኝ። እሱ ነው ቅድም